Chapter 1088. Sun Lang quickly heard the news that the Chow family had asked for an audience. He sighed, and a trace of gloominess appeared in his eyes. Bullshit. General Shun Se threw the books in his hands onto the table. He couldn't help but feel a sense of irritation. These books had been dug out by Empress from the Ministry of Finance. The contents were rather secret and obscure. However, with Empress and Sun Lang's intelligence, they could easily analyze that the main character in the books was Shun Yaohua. Not long after the Battle of the Great Barren Mountain had ended, the Emperor had made contact with Shun Yaohua. This woman had made her choice early on. She wasn't willing to obediently observe mourning as a widow, nor was she willing to be a woman of the new era who had the courage to pursue her own happiness. Instead, she held on to the dream of reviving the dead and sank into confusion and obsession. This was the worst choice, but she didn't understand it, and she couldn't see through it. She insisted on being involved and stood on the opposite side of Sun Lang. Sun Lang took a deep breath and suppressed the anger and killing intent boiling in his heart. Controlling his anger and killing intent was not difficult. He had already done it for 2 years. His heart was like iron and stone that had been forged in blood and fire for a long time. He would never lose his reason because of anger. He just felt a little guilty, because in the near future, he might take this woman's life. He also felt a little sad, because in these days, although he and Shun Yaohua had only met a few times, each time they met, the impression was deep enough. He could feel the kindness and trust this woman conveyed to him. Those gentle whispers, those tireless admonitions, all contained a tenderness and pity that could not be dissolved. Shun Yaohua didn't seem to hate him, the enemy who had killed her husband. She didn't even seem to view him as an enemy. Although Sun Lang had always avoided interacting too much with Shun Yaohua, in the depths of his heart, he longed to communicate with this woman. He liked that feeling. This came from an unspeakable selfishness. Shun Yaohua was that person's widow. If this woman chose to forgive and understand, then his heart might feel a little better. But now, it seemed that all this was just Shun Yaohua's disguise. According to the Emperor's initial plan, he had planned to place Shun Yaohua, this chess piece, by his side. Using the guilt and unease in his heart, the other side would strike a fatal blow at the right time. That was why Shun Yaohua had shown such an ambiguous attitude, why she had taken the initiative to show her goodwill, and why she had approached him as if nothing had happened. The things she had said, the things she had helped him with, it was likely that she had ulterior motives as well. Sure enough, the more beautiful a woman was, the better she was at deceiving others. Sun Lang shook his head and sighed silently. Of course, I'm also quite stupid. I killed her husband and expected her to not hate me. What a joke. But as expected, he still felt a little sad. If it was just this one matter, then it would be fine. But before one wave had settled, another wave arose. Shun Yaohua's matter had just happened, and the Chow family hurriedly got involved. They forcibly squeezed themselves into the teeth of the storm, as if they were afraid that they wouldn't die quickly enough. This made Sun Lang's mood more and more irritable. Can't they see that the current situation in the court is a big whirlpool? Sun Lang couldn't help but complain to Panji. In this kind of situation, they don't hurry to stay out of it. They actually want to toss their lives into it. The Chow family has lost the Sword Saint. What can they do? Didn't I come to find you? Panji shook his head and said, Men die for wealth and birds die for food. That is a sacred sword. With this sword, there is hope for the third generation of the family to prosper. No family can resist the temptation of 7 luminaries. Sun Lang's face was gloomy, and he didn't say a word. The Chow family was the family of his old friend, so he should take care of them. But now was a special time. He hoped that the Chow family could stay far away from the center of the situation and not get involved in this big mess. Unfortunately, the heavens didn't fulfill people's wishes. The Chow family was like this, and so was Shun Yaohua. Everyone was persistent and crazy for different reasons. He couldn't help but curse. Mother asterisk her. Each and every one of them is reckless. Panji frowned and said, You seem to be a little strange. Sun Lang glanced at him and waved his hand, saying, Drive them away. I don't want to see them. The old lady of the Chow family is here. It's not good for a group of people to wait outside, right? Pongji said the Chow family just went outside the palace to cry for justice, and they should have been rejected. Now, they come to you to ask for your help, but this is also an opportunity. Shen Yaohua is obviously on the emperor's side. Since that is the case, she is our enemy. The Chow family is entangled with her, so it is our chance to attack her. Then I don't want to see her either, Sun Lang said angrily. Although Shen Yaohua left the marriage with nothing, she was still the wife of the Chow family. We were once a family. It's okay to quarrel about the divorce, but she actually came to ask me, her enemy, to help her. How shameless. Pongji was shocked. Hey, you can't say that. Sun Lang shouted. So what if I say it? Go and tell the old lady of the Chow family that I killed her son. It's really not convenient for me to do this. Pongji didn't say anything and said loudly, Don't make a fuss. Wait here. He immediately turned and went out. He ran around the 7th floor of the Luan Fong Hemming restaurant and thought for a moment. He came to Princess Pingyang's door, knocked, and whispered, Your Highness, come quickly. Commander of War has gone crazy. A moment later, she ran out and opened the door. What's wrong? I heard some noise in my master's room, but I didn't dare to peek. Pongji whispered, I'm afraid he was provoked today. I heard that he had a fight with the Sun Moon Sword Sage at the Shen family. I don't know what's wrong with him. Zhao Yunlong, Lu Shujin, Shui Baochai, and Lin Daiyu are all not here. I'll have to trouble your highness to go and comfort him. We're all depending on you. A sense of mission burned in Ping Yang's chest. In the past, commander of war in the Tianyuan army would do something shocking from time to time. Sometimes he would even cause chaos in the entire army camp. The soldiers didn't dare to persuade him. Those who dared to do so would either be ridiculed by the commander of war's eloquence and become the laughingstock of the army. Otherwise, they would be hung on the army's flagpole by the commander of war's ferocious strength. Only the iron ladies in the army could make the commander of war reign in the horse at the brink of the cliff. In the past, the ones who took on this responsibility were the few female heroes that Pongji had mentioned. If they really couldn't do it, there was still the trick of quickly invite General Tensei. Princess Pingyang was just a weak little disciple back then. It would be difficult for her to take on such a big responsibility. Now that she was entrusted with such a task, her little heart was lifted. I'll go right now. Don't worry, Lord Pongji. Seeing Pingyang valiantly leave, Pongji wiped his cold sweat and quickly went downstairs. He had to think of a suitable reason to deal with the people of the Chow family for the time being. In the reception hall of the Copper Sparrow Terrace, the core members of the Chow family were invited to sit in the flower pavilion. Not many people came this time, but they were the most important ones. Chow Yuanrang glanced at the decorations around and said in a low voice, Mother, you don't have to come. This is a brothel. It's really dirty, your eyes. We brothers will just go there. The old lady of the Chow family shook her head and said, I'm here because I'm thick-skinned as an elder. As long as General Tensei cares about our old friendship, he won't leave me alone. But if you guys come here, you'll probably be rejected. What can you do when you have a favor to ask? Chow Yuanrang and his brothers looked at each other with worry on their faces. He asked softly, Mother, there's no conclusion about what happened in the Great Bear Mountain. If such an embarrassing thing really happened, how can Sun Lang be willing to help us? Just because of our old friendship. He will. The old lady put a small cloth bag on the table and gently stroked it. She said slowly, He will be interested in the things left by our old friend. Chapter 1089. The door was not closed, so Princess Pingyang cautiously poked her head in and met Sun Lang's eyes. In that instant, Her Royal Highness cried out in alarm and subconsciously shrank back. Her heartbeat suddenly became very fast, and an inexplicable chill surged into her heart. It was a feeling of fear, because she saw something unfamiliar in her master's eyes. Indifference, rationality, suspicion, cautiousness. She was actually not unfamiliar with this kind of eyes, because she had seen it in another person's eyes before. That person also had this kind of eyes, like a lonely and ferocious wolf, standing alone on a cold mountain peak, looking all around, and no one could quietly approach him. Although it was very cold, it was safe. That person was like this all year round, using indifferent and suspicious eyes to examine everything around him. That person's name was Li Guangyuan, the emperor of this country. It was said that it was lonely at the top, and that the emperor was lonely, but that was just a way to live, a way to protect himself. Now, she seemed to see the same look in her master's eyes, a suspicious and indifferent gaze. Was it an illusion? Her heart was beating wildly, and she felt a burst of inexplicable panic. After hesitating for a moment, she gritted her teeth, leaned over again, and then breathed a sigh of relief. It was indeed an illusion. Her master's eyes were very gentle, just like usual. "Sneaky, what are you doing?" Even his angry tone was as usual, which made her feel at ease. Ping Yang breathed a sigh of relief, and with a charming smile, she answered honestly, "I heard from Master Peng that you are in a bad mood, so I came to make you happy." Sun Lang looked at her and said with a smile that was not a smile, "Then do you want to do a split in the air?" Ping Yang was stunned, just like that. For martial arts expert, this action was too simple. Sun Lang touched his chin and looked at Ping Yang's palace dress. "Do you want to change your clothes?" The little princess blushed. "Master, little brat." Sun Lang snorted disdainfully and waved his hand. "Go away. I'm not a child anymore. I can share master's burdens." Ping Yang puffed up her cheeks, feeling very indignant. She jogged to the side and pulled a chair for herself. She sat opposite Sun Lang and said seriously, "Master is in a bad mood. I can help to counsel him." Sun Lang squinted and said, "Io, how are you going to enlighten him?" Ping Yang said seriously, "I'm in a bad mood. Of course, I should talk about some happy things." "For example?" Her Highness tilted her head and grinned. "For example, even though Master has a large number of people by his side right now, they're all men after all, and they don't speak in a proper manner. However, Big Sister Shui and the others will enter the capital soon. At that time, Master's side will instantly become lively. At that time, everyone will fight and quarrel every day. How happy and lively it will be. Master, aren't you looking forward to it?" Sun Lang looked at his little disciple with a complicated expression. Princess Ping Yang blinked innocently. "Master, what's wrong?" Sun Lang sighed. "Sometimes I wonder if you did it on purpose." "What? On purpose what?" "Nothing." Sun Lang leaned back in his chair, and his expression became gloomy again. Princess Ping Yang realized that she seemed to have messed up and was at a loss for a moment. Master, what's wrong? Did I say something wrong? It doesn't make sense. Isn't this something to be happy about? Could it be that Master doesn't want to see Big Sister Shui? Or Master, are you afraid?" Sun Lang immediately waved his hand. Okay, don't say any more." "Oh." Ping Yang agreed with a disappointed expression, looking very depressed. After a moment, Sun Lang sighed softly. "I'm just a little sad, thinking about what happened before. The Battle of the Great Barren Mountain was a great mystery at the end of the Great War of Tianyuan. Many people try to find out the truth behind it, but the truth was countless broken pieces of the puzzle. Apart from Sun Lang, no one had seen the full picture of the inside story, not even the emperor. He only grasped a large part of the puzzle. The reason why Sun Lang was lonely was that he had no one to talk to. He was even afraid of talking to others, and did not dare to tell the secrets in his heart to anyone, not even Yin Luo and the others, because he was afraid, because this was the empire and Yin Luo and the others grew up in this country. If he told them that in the Great Barren Mountain, he almost broke the sword of the earth in his madness, killed countless soldiers of the empire, and caused the empire to lose the ability to create an imperial army, he was not sure what kind of expression the girls would have. He did not dare to gamble. Even if there was a slight possibility of them turning against him, he did not dare to gamble. How could he explain such things to others? But if he thought about it carefully, Ping Yang was a qualified person to talk to, because she also grasped a part of the puzzle. She knew the real identity of Sun Lang, and she had pretended to be the sword saint of the earth for 2 years. As smart as she had a lot of secrets in her heart. There were some things that could be discussed. Sun Lang closed his eyes and said calmly, "Shen Yaohua was the emperor's chess piece. She was exposed today, and now she has joined the emperor as the sword saint of water. Princess Pingyang opened her eyes wide. What? This? She had met Shun Yaohua several times and had even interacted with her before. In her impression, Shun Yaohua was a gentle and harmless beauty. She was a well-educated lady from a noble family, a virtuous woman in the traditional sense. How could such a person work for the emperor? Sun Lang said lightly. The emperor must have bewitched her. She believed it and was obsessed with it. She thought that the emperor had a way to resurrect her husband, so she made a deal. The emperor planned to put her by my side at the beginning, using my friendship with old Chow and my guilt towards her. Then he would wait for an opportunity to hide and achieve his unspeakable goal at the critical moment. Was that so? Princess Pingyang listened in a daze, but she suddenly shuddered. She remembered the look in Sun Lang's eyes at the very beginning. Indifferent, rational, scrutinizing, suspicious. An inexplicable chill swept through her heart again. She suddenly realized the reason why her master showed that kind of look. The girl's body suddenly trembled, and grievances and sadness surged in her heart. Her eyes suddenly turned red, and big drops of tears flowed down. She whispered, "Master," Sun Lang sighed. "Why are you crying?" "I haven't said anything yet." Pingyang's eyes were red, and she tried hard to stop her tears. Her voice was trembling. I know that Master has experienced those things, and it's normal for him to be hesitant. After all, I'm his daughter. After all, even my sister." She tried to make her voice sound calm, and she tried to look strong. She tried to hold back her tears and sadness, but she couldn't help it. Princess Pingyang burst into tears. She cried while wiping her tears. "But Master, I really didn't. I didn't have any ulterior motives, and I didn't have any bad intentions. I wasn't ordered by anyone," she said while crying. "Master, if you don't believe me, you can abolish my martial arts. If you still don't believe me, you can shackle my feet. If that doesn't work, I won't leave the house." The more Pingyang said, the sadder she became. Her body trembled, and she cried like a little quail. Her voice trembled as if it was the end of the world. If it doesn't work, I can leave." Speaking of this, she couldn't help but cry again. "But I really don't want to leave, Master. I don't know where I should go. Go back to the palace or to my sister's place." "Master, you won't care about me anymore, right? You'll definitely think that I'm with my sister." Sun Lang sighed. "All right, don't cry." Pingyang tried hard to control herself, but it was very difficult. She felt panic and sadness that penetrated into her bones. She couldn't bear her master's suspicion and scrutiny. She tried her best to suppress her crying. If it wasn't for her profound skills, she would have been sobbing. But she was already very uncomfortable. She said intermittently, "I'm sorry. I've made things difficult for Master." Sun Lang opened his eyes and looked at his disciple who was close to him. He said softly, "I'm also very sorry." His eyes became ethereal. He looked past his little disciple and through time, looking at the drastic changes in fate over the past 10 years. "I'm actually not a brave person. From the beginning until now, I've always been like this. I don't dare to believe because I'm afraid of being hurt. Perhaps it's very difficult for me to trust someone wholeheartedly in my life. Ever since the Great Barren Mountain, whenever I meet someone again, I'll be prepared. I'll be prepared to be betrayed. If I'm prepared, then when the betrayal comes, it won't be too painful." He slowly smiled. It was a slightly weak and depressed smile. "Shin Yaohua is actually the same. I've been prepared for it since a long time ago." Sun Lang covered his chest. There was a hint of tiredness in his smile, but damn it, it still hurts a little. Pingyang whispered, "Master, but speaking of which, it's just that. The reason why it hurts is because I asked for it." Sun Lang shook his head and said, "It's my own imagination. It's because I felt good about myself. It's because I couldn't see through it. I suffered a blow to the head. Speaking of which, this situation is considered good. Because I had the upper hand, the emperor fell into a strategic disadvantage. All kinds of arrangements could only be made in advance. This led to Shun Yaohua's exposure. It made this betrayal seem a little hasty, and it didn't cause any losses." He pounded his chest hard. Otherwise, it'll be even more painful. Ping Yang said anxiously. Master, I won't betray you. I really won't. I'll never do it. I'll prove myself in any way you want me to. Sun Lang interrupted her. Can I trust you? Ping Yang nodded without hesitation. Yes. You definitely won't regret it. Her eyes were full of hope and anxiety. She was like a defendant standing in the courtroom, waiting for the judge's final decision. Actually, Sun Lang smiled. It's like lifespan. He said something that didn't make sense. It's like lifespan. People grow up day by day, year by year. Every year you grow up, it means you're 1 year closer to death. It's like lifespan. He said softly, it's like trust. I try to trust, I try to love, I try to miss. I try to get my trust and hope for an equal reward. If I'm disappointed, if I'm betrayed, I'll feel heartache and coldness. My patience will gradually collapse, and the balance will slowly become unbalanced. Maybe because of a small opportunity, I'll make a decision, and then something will happen. You should understand what I'm saying, right? His eyes became very deep, hiding a horror that could destroy everything. My sword hangs above the world. Sun Lang looked at his disciple and said softly, I try to trust. I hope for an equal reward. Ping Yang, I can't give you absolute trust now. Maybe I can in the future. I can only say that I try to trust you, and I hope you can reciprocate this trust. Ping Yang raised her head and looked at Sun Lang seriously, listening seriously. Sun Lang stopped and was silent for a moment. Then he smiled and said, You're my disciple. You cried enough today, so I won't say anything unpleasant. It's good that you understand. Ping Yang blinked and suddenly threw herself into Sun Lang's arms, crying loudly, Master! Sun Lang's emotions were surging today. The conditioned reflexes that he had cultivated over the past 2 years were temporarily ineffective. He couldn't react in time. Plus, Ping Yang's martial arts weren't weak. He was careless and was thrown into her arms. With her warm and fragrant body in his arms, the girl was sobbing. Her delicate body was trembling, and her tears were flowing. Sun Lang's head was slow by half a beat. He was shocked. He held the girl's shoulders and said, Wait. Are you crying? Ping Yang pouted. She cried and said vaguely, Nonsense. I'm scared to death. Sun Lang checked carefully. Indeed, there was only water flowing from the top. There didn't seem to be anything below. He pondered for a moment and immediately thought of the reason. It was Shen Yaohua. They had been in physical contact for a long time, and he almost peeled off the radiant water grandsword master. Based on the previous suppression pattern of the great bodyguard, she was now in a buff state. As he thought of this, a beautiful white figure appeared in his mind. This was the last ripple that Shen Yaohua gave him. From now on, there might not be such an opportunity. He patted Ping Yang's back gently. Like I said earlier, perhaps because of small opportunity, he would make a decision. Just like now, he patted Ping Yang's head gently and said, All right, little kitten, it's about time. Cry for a while. I'm going to meet the guests. Ping Yang was very reluctant, but now she had to be obedient and not be a burden to her master. The girl left Sun Lang's arms and looked up at her master. Suddenly, her expression changed slightly. Sun Lang raised his eyebrows and said, What's wrong? Nothing. Although she said this, Ping Yang felt a little uneasy in her heart. She didn't know where this uneasiness in her heart came from, but she faintly felt that her master's current state seemed to be a little off, but she couldn't tell what was wrong. Something was wrong. Sun Lang patted her head again and turned to leave the room. Chapter 1090. The Chow family had come to visit, and the commander of war was showing signs of going crazy. Imperial Tutor Pang was very worried. He first called for Princess Ping Yang to put out the fire, and then ran to the Chow family, saying that the general was meeting with guests and so on. In any case, the Chow family had come to ask for help, so they had to wait obediently. After dealing with this, he wiped the sweat from his forehead, but he still felt a little uneasy. To put it simply, he doubted Princess Ping Yang's ability to do business. This shy and introverted princess was usually commander of war's little follower. Basically, she would turn into a quail if Sun Lang glared at her. Moreover, Pangji secretly sighed. Moreover, Princess Pingyang was a royal lady. Especially in the current situation, Sun Lang had basically shed all pretenses of cordiality with the imperial family, and the battle between the two sides was about to break out at any moment. In this kind of situation where the two sides could not coexist, which side would Princess Pingyang stand on? This was also something that was very suspicious. Thinking of this, he felt more and more uneasy. He wanted to go back to the 7th floor to eavesdrop, but when he turned around the corridor, the wind blew in his face, and he saw General Shunsei striding over. Pangji was stunned, and then turned pale with fright. This Princess Pingyang was indeed unreliable. Calm down, the old lady of the Chow family is old. If you scold her to death, this matter will be too ugly. Sun Lang rolled his eyes. What are you talking about? I am famous for respecting the old and loving the young. It would be strange if I believed you. Pangji shouted in a low voice. How many old people and children have fallen in your hands? Sun Lang blinked. Have I? Imperial Tutor Pang's memory was very good, and he immediately said the names of more than 10 victims. Bah, reputation? I think you're notorious. Half of your enemies are made like this. Either they bully the young and hang other people's children a beat, or they scold the elderly and hit them without saying a word. Sun Lang raised his eyebrows and said, Hey, look at what you're saying. A brat who uses his family background to do whatever he wants and thinks no one is beneath him. Is he even human? An old thing who takes advantage of his seniority and orders me around. Is he even human? What bullying? I'm about the same age as them. I'm still a child. How is that bullying? Those Xiong parents who came to me to reason with me afterwards are the ones who are bullying the young. Okay? As he spoke, he pushed Pangji to the side. Don't worry, the Chow family is one of us. How could I do something so overboard? Don't worry. Pangji was completely worried and wanted to stop them, but Sun Lang shouted, Where's the old lady? Where's the old lady? Io, Pang Chuanji, why didn't you tell me immediately? Pangji was so angry that smoke was coming out of his 7 orifices. He pointed at Sun Lang, and his fingers trembled. He was speechless. Sun Lang smiled at him and patted his shoulder. Don't worry, I'm fine. Pangji was startled. Sun Lang brushed past him and walked towards the parlor. Imperial Tutor Pang stayed where he was and remained silent. He turned his head and looked deeply at Sun Lang's back as he left. His heart was covered with a layer of haze. He was meticulous. He had worked with Sun Lang for many years. Some things, some changes could not escape his eyes. There's a murderous aura on your body, Pangji muttered silently and quietly clenched his fists. He had selfishness. Everyone had selfishness. After all, everyone had flesh and blood, not puppets. They did not hesitate to reunite under Sun Lang's command because of trust and friendship. However, everyone had their own thoughts and expectations regarding the future development and future appearance. Android had the temperament of a devil incarnate. He despised authority and was rebellious. He was a pure martial artist. He was bloodthirsty and warlike. He longed for the battlefield and achievements. He was dissatisfied with the lifeless imperial court. He was dissatisfied with the current situation that was full of compromise and selfishness. He hoped that the commander of war could defeat the imperial power and take control of the imperial court. He hoped that the commander of war could inject new life into the world's most powerful empire. Although the sky demon was gone, war would always exist. Li Fire, Rue Jin, Xianshui, Greenwood. The 4 big countries and countless small countries. The vast world meant endless war. His thoughts represented the thoughts of a portion of the martial artists. Pangji was a civil official. Civil officials also had ambitions. However, the civil official's ambition was not to immediately become an official, but to bring peace to the world and rule the world. He followed Sun Lang because he was attracted by the other party's rebellious thoughts. Those seemingly absurd words and actions hid great love and the holy way. He hoped to follow Sun Lang and realize the vision that he had once described step by step. That was the true great empire of great harmony. We're following you for different reasons. We hope to realize our ambitions and wishes through this. Everyone has different ideas, but there's also a part of us that's similar. Pongji retracted his gaze and smiled silently. Yes, similarities. Even a heartless, bloodthirsty, and warlike madman like Android did not want you to become someone like him. Commander of War, we have different thoughts and selfish motives, but we also have the same hope. We hope that you will not lose yourself. We hope that you will not be blinded. But now, Pongji's eyes flashed with a hint of worry. He knew that Shun Yaohua's matter had stimulated Commander of War. Although Sun Lang acted as if nothing had happened, his heart was filled with restlessness and murderous intent. Princess Pingyang did not seem to appease him, or perhaps not completely appease him. I have to think of a way. Pongji frowned and turned to leave. He did not need to worry about the Chow family anymore. He had more important things to do. When Sun Lang opened the door, everyone in the room had already stood up and addressed him as Commander of War. Now, Sun Lang's position was the Shinsei General and the Crown Prince's Imperial Tutor. However, the title of Commander of War was obviously more affectionate and sounded more cordial. There were a total of 6 people from the Chow family. Led by Old Lady Chow, they were the pillars of the second generation of the Chow family. Apart from the patriarch, almost all the important figures of the Chow family were here. Sun Lang's eyes swept over, and he roughly understood in his heart. It was Old Lady Chow who came, not the patriarch of the Chow family. Firstly, it was to play the emotional card. It was obviously more appropriate to send an old lady with silver hair. Secondly, it was a matter of face. If the patriarch of the Chow family came personally and did not come to an agreement, it would be very embarrassing. He understood in his heart, but his expression did not change. He greeted everyone one by one. The Chow family was the family of a sword sage. With the sword sage of water as their backer, the Tianyuan battlefield was the best stage for the family's disciples to gain fame and a future. The outstanding Chow family disciples had all established their achievements on the battlefield and obtained official positions. After the war, they would also receive generous rewards and titles. This was one of the benefits of having a sword sage in the family. It was not an unspoken rule, but an open one. It was not that he wanted to use the identity of the sword saint to get some privileges and get promoted quickly. There was no need for that at all. If your boss knew your background, even if it was just to make friends with you, he would be willing to give you more opportunities and be more lenient. He would favor you in the assessment in exchange for a chance to win the friendship of the 7 luminary sword saint. If you were not an idiot and were rather talented, being born in the Sword Saint's family would mean a golden path for you to rise to the top. The so-called exclusion of your peers and the ceiling in the workplace would not exist. This was an open rule, a phenomenon that was even more despairing than the unspoken rule. Because of the wide connections and support of the family, the disciples of the aristocratic families would have more opportunities than the disciples of the humble families. What was even more important was that a good family background meant the best education resources and environment for growth. This made the disciples of the aristocratic families more outstanding than the disciples of the humble families. Adding on the help of the family's connections, they could easily achieve more than the disciples of the humble families. Then it was a vicious cycle. The good ones were better, and the bad ones were worse. It was even more despairing than the unspoken rule. The unspoken rule might be exposed, and the political opponents might seize the opportunity to attack you. But in the face of such an open rule, even the most honest and unselfish reformers could do nothing about it. If the reformers could not change it, a revolution could. But what if even a revolution could not change it? TSK, TSK, TSK. However, Sun Lang did not need to worry about the problem of the system for the time being, because he had become a member of the evil imperialists and a person he hated the most when he was a child. He just felt that the scene in front of him was a bit ironic. With the hidden benefits of the Sword Sage of Water, the Chow family had obtained a lot of political resources and social status on the Heaven's origin battlefield. Now, the disciples of the Chow family were all famous, and the young and vigorous members of the second generation were also quite influential in the court. However, The Sword Sage of Water had died in the grand desolate mountain. Their greatest support had disappeared. The family could defend itself, but there was no hope for expansion. However, the birth of the Sword Sage of Water had given them hope of revival. Because the owner of the sword was Shun Yaohua, the widow of the former owner of the Sword Sage of Qinxing. They tried every means to claim that Shun Yaohua had stolen the secret of controlling the Sword Sage of Water. They wanted to keep the Sword Sage of Qinxing in the Chao family. As the saying goes, greed blinds one's mind. The benefits brought by the Sword Sage of Water had overwhelmed the Chao family's mind. They missed the glory of the Sword Sage of Water too much. Even if Shun Yaohua had gained the approval of the Sword Sage of Water with her own ability, the Chao family would not accept this at all. There was no right or wrong, only benefits. In order to achieve this goal, they did not hesitate to beg Sun Lang. Even if there were endless rumors in the court that Shun Se would be responsible for the death of the Sword Sage of Water. In the face of the future of the Chao family, this small matter was nothing. Sun Lang sneered in his heart. Although he had long understood the way the big families acted, he still felt sad for his old friend after seeing it with his own eyes. The old lady of the Chao family was crying in front of him. She was still crying out in her heart. She was very sincere and looked very sad. Chao Yuanrang supported the old lady. Several Chao family members also looked sad. The old lady cried and said, "When I see the general, I see Brother Jean. You're old friends and used to be very kind. My poor child has a hard life." Sun Lang became more and more impatient in his heart, but his face was full of sadness. He looked at Chao Yuanrang and said with a reproachful tone, "Why did you let the old lady come here? If she wanted to see me, she could have sent an invitation and I would have gone to visit her. Why bother her to come here in person?" Chao Yuanrang was more familiar with him. Hearing this, he cursed in his heart. What a nice way to put it. Would you have come if you had sent an invitation? Do you think I don't know what kind of person you are? But he still had to answer submissively. It's my fault for not thinking things through. I'm really ashamed, Sun Lang sighed. The old lady is old. Don't cry too much. If you don't mind, there are clean rooms in the Copper Sparrow Terrace. Clean one and let the old lady rest first. Brother Yuanrang, if there's anything, let's talk in private. When the old lady heard this, she was slightly shocked. In the past, when she exchanged letters with Brother Jean, about 1/3 of the letters were her son's complaints. The content of the complaints was usually related to one person, and that was the battle commander Jiaoying. In her son's description, the famous and outstanding young general was a military oddity. His temperament was strange, and he was full of evil tricks. His actions were very strong, and he often made him feel battered and exhausted, and his heart was bitter. Therefore, she understood Sun Lang's character very well. She knew that this stupid son of hers, Chao Yuanrang, was not Sun Lang's opponent at all. Therefore, she restrained her crying and said directly, "This old one will not rest. If there is no explanation for this, I won't die in peace. Please, for the sake of Brother Jean, seek justice for the Chao family." TSK, this old lady is really difficult to deal with. Sun Lang looked at old lady Chao again. In the past, when he chatted with the Sword Saint of Water and listened to his complaints, the complaints were usually related to only one person. That was his mother, old lady Chao. In his description, his mother was a strong and tenacious woman. She was very strict with her family and had very sharp eyes. She was a practical person who would not give up until she achieved her goal. In short, she was the polar opposite of his wife. According to him, because of his mother's education and supervision, he had a misunderstanding about women. He thought that all women in the world were as strict and strong as his mother. It was only after he got married that this idea changed. Because his wife was the most gentle and kind girl he had ever met, she made him feel warmth that he had not felt for a long time. As for whether she was beautiful or not, he said that he did not care. He had seen very few women, so he did not know whether his wife was beautiful or not. He was also not interested in a woman's beauty. The most important thing was her heart and personality. Of course, every time after they talked about this topic, he would be teased and beaten by Sun Lang. He would hide in the tent alone and feel sad, helpless, and confused for a while. Then he would take out a pen and paper and write a letter to his mother, complaining that his new friend was bullying him again. But now, he was no longer there. However, the two evil characters that he had been complaining about had met. Both of them had their own selfish motives. His mother was indeed, as he said, strong, smart, and would not give up until she achieved her goal. She even used his death as a bargaining chip. Brother Jean left behind a lot of relics. I brought some of them today. Old Lady Chow pushed away Chow Yuanrong's support and pointed to the box on the table. We have carefully organized and read it, but the relics were not complete. Now it seems that the little bitch must have taken them. I hope the general can seek justice for Brother Jean. She opened the box and said softly, "Please take a look." At the top of the box, there was a stone. Chapter 1091. The Copper Sparrow Terrace was the #1 brothel in the capital, and the Luan Feng Mingming Pavilion was the tallest brothel in the Copper Sparrow Terrace. As the night fell and the lanterns were lit, the Copper Sparrow Terrace was lit up with a soft light. Sun Lang sat on the roof, looking at the night sky of the capital, holding a box in his hand. There were some things in the box, the relics of a sword saint friend of his. The people of the Chow family had already been sent away by him with an ambiguous promise. From Old Lady Chow's expression, it could be seen that she was not satisfied with this result. However, she was a shrewd old lady. She knew how to observe people's expressions and knew how to act appropriately. She knew when to stop and when to take things slowly. In this meeting, she had already gotten what she wanted. At least, that was what she thought. Your mother saw through it. Sun Lang said in a low voice. She saw my impatience and my guilt. She probably guessed what happened in the great desolate mountain. After all, no one knows a son better than a mother. My attitude, your temperament, the letters you sent back, your last words. So she guessed what her son did in the great desolate mountain. She didn't say it out loud. She pretended not to know, but all her words and actions were silently reminding me of one thing. I owe your Chow family, and I hope I can repay it. This is called having nothing to fear. Because she doesn't think I'm an ungrateful person. She thinks that I won't leave the Chow family alone, no matter what. She hopes that I can repay her son's kindness, the kindness that he exchanged his life for. Repay it all at once. She wants the holy sword. She wants the Chow family to become a sword saint again. Sun Lang said and laughed softly. It's really hard to understand. Your mother actually wants me to repay the kindness in one go, with a mere holy sword. Under normal circumstances, shouldn't it be long-term? Where I'm from, the bank doesn't even want you to pay the mortgage in advance. Even if you do, you still have to pay a F*King penalty. As he spoke, he patted the box. With our friendship, I can definitely protect your family for a long time. As long as your family doesn't cross the line and doesn't do anything that will cause the heavens to punish you, I'll continue to take care of your family. I didn't expect your mother to want to pay it all at once. Should I say that she killed the goose that laid the golden eggs? Or should I say that she is greedy beyond measure? But I can understand her thoughts. Sun Lang said softly, You said that your mother is a shrewd and strong woman. She is self-reliant and has a strong desire for control. She doesn't like uncertain factors. After all, she still has to lower her voice when she needs help from others. She can't tell how long I can take care of the Chow family. She can't even tell if I can defeat the emperor. Under these circumstances, the most reliable method is to turn the so-called kindness into a ready-made sacred sword. After all, with the sacred sword, the Chow family is still the Sword Saint's family. No matter who the person in power is, they still have to show respect. Smart, really smart. Sun Lang's finger slid across the box. Furthermore, even though she said that she wanted to cash it out in one go, she must have her own plans. Putting everything else aside, even if the Chow family were to meet with a calamity in the future and be destroyed, I would definitely lend a helping hand. She has nothing to fear. She's got me. What good move. She's simply manipulating the clouds and rain with a flip of her hand. She's maximizing the benefits of your death. I wonder what your expression is right now. Well, it's probably a bitter smile, or a matter-of-fact expression, or perhaps a gratified expression. After all, I still remember your embarrassing appearance. You were covered with wounds and were about to die. Moreover, you were in great pain. In the end, you were crying, but not because you were about to die, but because you were unfilial. You said that you had let down the family and your mother. You said that your willful and reckless actions would definitely implicate the family. Even if the emperor didn't dare to pursue your actions, the consequences of losing a sword saint were quite severe. Now that your mother has used your death to exchange for benefits from me, you must be very gratified. Sun Lang raised his head and looked in a certain direction in the night sky. Several thousand miles away in this direction was the Great Desolate Mountain. Many things had happened there, things that he didn't want to recall and couldn't forget. Mountains of corpses and seas of blood, the world that had changed color, and people who were covered in wounds. He was a timid guy who had followed the rules all his life. He never knew how to resist or question. He was like a flower that had bloomed in a greenhouse, like a puppet that had no sense of self. Even though he was a sword saint, he didn't have his own temper or thoughts. He was a mommy's boy in the 6 armies of Tianyuan. When he was bullied, he would sulk. When he was offended, he would laugh. He didn't know how to be flexible, and he would write letters to his mother every day. On the last day of his life, he completed the first and last rebellion of his life. Such an old-fashioned guy who followed the rules was full of his style, even if he rebelled. He was stubborn and didn't know how to be flexible. Once he set his target, he wouldn't turn back. He would clench his teeth and never relent. Therefore, in the face of the encirclement of the army, the persuasion of his colleagues, the imperial edict of the emperor, and the many layers of iron armor and swords, he pulled out the sword of Chun Xing and never took a step back. He was not good with words and was sentimental. He was used to recording his feelings with a pen, but he wasn't good at talking to others. He was a good boy, so he didn't know how to quarrel. He was often stunned by Sun Lang's words. Sun Lang had taught him patiently for 5 years, but he hadn't been taught a single swear word. So, when faced with the furious rebukes, accusations, orders, attacks that covered the heavens and the earth, he was still clumsy with his words. He didn't argue eloquently, nor did he speak righteously. He only repeated the same few sentences over and over again. You can't kill him. Back off. Back off. He is Jiang, the marshal of the empire, the hero of Hutu. Are you going to wave your swords at him? He did nothing wrong. That's why I have to protect him. At that time, Sun Lang was counterattacked by the devil of the ancestor. The two sides started a desperate battle on the spiritual level. He couldn't control his body, but he could vaguely feel the scene outside. Weapons, brutality, waves of blood, roars, and the man who carried him out of the encirclement. The man was roaring and roaring. He had never fought as hard as he did that day. He didn't like killing, but at that time, he was desperately waving his sword. Qi Lianyan's voice sounded far and near. His Majesty's order is here. He ordered us to kill Jiang. You disobeyed the order and colluded with the rebels. You are about to die, and you will implicate your family. Don't tell me you're going to abandon your family. Are you going to die with the rebels? Quickly kill Jiang and redeem yourself. We will plead for you and save your life. Otherwise, we won't be polite. The man desperately urged the power of the Star Sword. In the face of the Fire Sword Saint's righteous reprimand and advice, he was still clumsy and only responded with a dry sentence. Or maybe he didn't have the strength to retort. He just said, Jiang is not a rebel. Qi Lianyan shouted, His Majesty's order is here. You have seen it with your own eyes. Sun Lang, who was carried on the back of the Sword Saint of Water, could feel the trembling body and the fear, exhaustion, confusion, and sadness coming from the other side. Zhang Ge of the Chao family was born in a prosperous country and grew up in a prosperous city. He was born in a family of martial arts and lived in a place of wealth and prosperity. He was the most standard son of an aristocratic family. He followed the rules his whole life and was disciplined by a strict mother. He was taught by an excellent master. He practiced martial arts, studied literature, had a family, married, and grew up step by step. He was recognized by the divine sword and finally became the Sword Saint of Water. He had never encountered any setbacks or difficulties in his life, so he didn't know how to reflect or doubt. He listened to his mother's teachings and became the honorable Sword Saint. He was loyal to the supreme monarch and defended his country on the Tianyuan battlefield. Everything went smoothly without any mistakes. He was used to obeying orders. Everything was so natural. Until that day, his faith was shaken and doubts arose involuntarily. Ideals and reality clashed. On one side was his country, and on the other was his friends. On the other side was the emperor's order, and on the other side was his own soul. Therefore, a bolt of lightning struck his confused soul. To this day, Sun Lang still remembered that angry roar. That voice trembled a little, as if it lacked confidence. It was not domineering at all, but contained a stubbornness that he could not forget. On that day, one of his Sword Saint friends, in front of the battle, in front of the imperial edict, in between the past and the current life and death, made his choice. He said, "Your Majesty is wrong." It was a very simple sentence, but Sun Lang would never hear a more deafening roar in his life, whether it was in the past or in the future. He would never forget it. "Damn it," Sun Lang murmured. "You have left me with one big problem after another. Forget about the Great Health Preservation Force and the 3-year promise. What's going on now? Your wife, your mother, your family, they're all rushing into the limelight. What do you think I should do?" His voice grew softer and softer, as if he was afraid to disturb someone. He said in a low voice, "The relics you left behind say some things. Your mother guessed what you did in the Great Barren Mountain, and so did your wife. But the methods of these two women are completely different. You said that their personalities were completely different. Your mother wanted to use your death to exchange for benefits for the family. After all, the living are the most important. So she ran my side, squeezed me, and begged me. And your wife, she actually wanted to resurrect you. She also guessed some inside information about the Great Bear Mountain and knew the truth about your death. She may not hate me and may blame me, but for her, the most important thing was not to keep an eye on me and attack, but to see you again. So she ran to the Emperor's side and indirectly opposed me. What do you think I should do? Actually, I'm also in a difficult position. Actually, there is nothing difficult about it. I am not the kind of person who is suitable to be friends. You have made a mistake by treating me as a friend. Look at you. Usually, you are bullied by me, brainwashed by me, scolded by me, and made to doubt your life because of my twisted logic. When I was on the brink of death, only you jumped out to save me. You threw away your loyalty and your family. In the end, you died, your wife became a widow, your family lost its Sword Saint, and the Empire gained a time bomb like me. Now, I am competing with the Emperor to see who will destroy this country first. All of this is because you meddled in other people's business. You are even more meddlesome than Shiojichu. I am very sorry. I am really sorry. Even though you've done so much for me, I can't give you any more promises. I've kept my promise of 3 years, but this so-called promise has now become an excuse for me to protect myself. Now, I don't really want to destroy this world. It was you who gave me enough time to meet them. I owe you another big favor, but I can't repay you. Your wife has become my enemy. She is obsessed and believes the bullshit of the devil Yuan Zhu, but I can't wake her up. I am willing to tolerate her for the time being, and even show her mercy until I expose the tricks of the devil Yuan Zhu and shatter her fantasy. Then I will settle her down and take care of her. I am willing to do this, but if she hurts the people I love during this period, I think I will not show mercy. I'm sorry. Your mother wants the water in Nate's sacred sword, and your family wants to revive the Sword Saint family. But the sacred sword contains the trick of the devil's possession. If it falls into the hands of the Chao family, it will only bring disaster. The most important thing is that the sacred sword is in the hands of Shen Yaohua. This involves a problem. A question I once asked you. Sun Lang remembered the past and couldn't help laughing. You basked your wife in front of me. One day, I was tired of being basked in the sun, so I asked you if your mother and your wife fell into the water at the same time, who would you save? You said that you could mobilize the power of Chun Xing to move the water away and save both of them. But now, he opened the box and took out the stone inside. Below it were some letters and books. Old Lady Chow had put in a lot of effort. Some of the contents were accumulated letters, and some were the last words left by Shui Yao. The contents were basically related to Jiaying. She wanted to use this to arouse Sun Lang's guilt. But what she didn't know was that even if she didn't do this, Sun Lang's guilt and feelings for her son would not fade away. Shui Yao not only saved Sun Lang's life, but also pulled Sun Lang out of the abyss of despair and madness. His sacrifice made Sun Lang realize one thing: he was not abandoned by the whole world. Let me ask you, if you don't know martial arts, who would you save? You also said that you would save your mother without hesitation. Then you seriously explained filial piety to me, saying that saving your wife first and not saving your mother is not only a morally corrupt beast, but also you will be held accountable by the Empire's laws. As for your wife, you said that you would live and die with her. Sun Lang pinched the stone and played with it left and right. This stone was ordinary, and he couldn't see anything special about it. He tried to inject a little water spiritual power into it before, but there was no reaction at all. Okay, I got it. You want to save your mother, right? Sun Lang sighed. Your wife is really annoying. She actually cheated and played with my feelings. In the past, you always showed off in front of me. This time, it's not bad to let her live and die with you. He said a few words casually, pinched the stone in his hand, and then his expression changed slightly. Because it was a relic left by him, Sun Lang tried to activate it before and use the water spiritual power, but there was no reaction at all. Just now, when he pinched it, a little earth spiritual power leaked out. But unexpectedly, the stone had some subtle changes. Huh. Chapter 1092. Under the stimulation of the earth's spiritual energy, the ordinary-looking stone began to change. Sun Lang was startled for a moment, and then his expression changed. After all these years of training, he was already one of the most powerful people in this world. In terms of individual strength, he was already invincible. In terms of military achievements, he could be said to be famous in this world, and was comparable to the famous ministers of the past. Moreover, he had been on the battlefield for a long time, and had seen countless storms and waves. Even in the desperate situation of the Great Barren Mountain, where the whole world was his enemy, he had killed his way into a bloody world. His life experience had already allowed him to cultivate a calm demeanor that would not change even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him. There were very few things in the world that could move him, but right now there was one. This rather inconspicuous stone was a relic left behind by Brother Jean. This relic could react with the earth's spiritual energy. This meant this relic might have been left behind for him. Thinking of this, even if Sun Lang's heart was already as hard as stone, his hands could not help but tremble slightly. He put down the box in his hand, took a few deep breaths, and calmed himself down. Then, he picked up the stone again and circulated the power of the Earth Star suppressing star. He carefully injected it into the stone and observed the changes in the stone. The 5 elements promoted and suppressed each other, and earth could suppress water. That guy could indeed make something like this. But why did he leave this behind? The Battle of the Great Barren Mountain was a conspiracy that the Emperor and the Devil had been planning for a long time. It was handed over to Empress to arrange and arrange. With the support of the Emperor, the Tensei province took advantage of the situation and carried out a large amount of tactical deception and information guidance. With the right time, place, and people, this shocking killing trap was created. Before the Emperor's secret order was presented, everyone in the army was kept in the dark. They all thought that he was really going to set up a trap to lure the Sky Demon's main force to fight. Even Sun Lang did not realize that danger was approaching. On one hand, it was because Sun Lang was not vigilant enough. On the other hand, it was enough to show that Empress was calm, patient, and experienced. Even Sun Lang did not smell the scent of a conspiracy, let alone the foolish Shui Yao. So, why did he leave these things behind? Could it be that he had anticipated this beforehand? Sun Lang frowned and paused the infusion of spiritual power. He stretched out his hand, and the stone floated in the air, slowly rotating 3 inches above his fingertip. His eyes were filled with scrutiny and hesitation. Tonight, as he recalled the past and reminisced about his old friends, His mood was naturally agitated and his vigilance was lowered. But now, he remembered one thing. Brother Jean had passed away for 2 years. Even if he did leave behind a relic, it was possible that the relic had been tampered with. After all, although the stone that could react to the earth spirit energy was rare, it was not something that only the sword saint of water could make. After thinking carefully for a moment, Sun Lang could not help but laugh. "I'm really bewitched," he mocked himself. "I'm usually very calm, but when it comes to you, I lose my cool. I can't even think about such a small thing." He opened the box next to him and rummaged through the thick stack of documents. There were a few wills. He casually opened one of them and found that it was written to his mother. The words were sincere and sincere, full of regret and regret. There was no regret in sacrificing oneself for the country. It was full of the romantic feelings of a soldier. But the tone of the wills was the kind that said, "When you read this letter, your unfilial son will have sacrificed himself for the country." This kind of wills was very popular. After all, soldiers were half dead in the front lines of the army, and generals were bound to die in the front lines. No one knew whether they would live or die in the next battle, so they always left something for their family. The wills for other people were all like this. In other words, the wills that the Chow family received were not written in advance by the Sword Saint of Water, who had foreseen his death in battle. They were written in advance as a precaution against any mishaps. The nature of this stone was the same. Sun Lang was thinking too much. "It's all your fault. You've been dead for 2 years, but you always come out to disturb my state of mind." Sun Lang said in a low voice, "It's all my wishful thinking. It's been 2 years since we parted in the great desolate mountain. I kept our promise. I sought the meaning of life again in this world. I drew the thunder bow in Ming province. I sent by Yue away in Qin province. I returned to Summer province to see my grandmother for the last time. I slowly untied the knot in my heart one after another. Finally, I came to the capital. But I still can't let go of you. I don't know how to repay you. I don't know how to respond to your sacrifice and protection. You made a 3-year promise with me for my own good. It was so that I could have a new way of living. So I made a lot of decisions and participated in a lot of things. I chose a path for myself. I don't know if you'll be satisfied with the current me." He stroked the stone and said in a low voice, "So, I want to hear your voice. I hope that there's a message you left for me here. It will make me feel relieved. I'm thinking too much. You're such a stupid and dull guy. How could you predict what happened in the great desolate mountain in advance? How could you decide to sacrifice yourself in advance? How could you leave a targeted will for me in advance? It doesn't make sense. Even if there was something in this stone, it was just a prepared will, just like the letter to his mother. But even so, Sun Lang wanted to hear it. So he reached out his hand to the stone floating in the air. He used to be the sword saint of the Hotu Earth. Now, he was the strongest swordsman in the world. His hands were steady and precise. He could hold the sword and swing it by a hair's breadth. But at this moment, his hands were trembling slightly. Earth's spiritual energy was slowly injected into the stone. The so-called 5 elements were not absolute. Although water could restrain fire, a cup of water splashed into a towering flame would only produce a burst of water vapor. Earth could restrain water. If there was too much water, there would be soil flow. If there was too little water, it would become silt. Sun Lang controlled his strength and carefully controlled the earth's spiritual energy until the stone emitted a faint watery light. Then a water curtain condensed in the void like a curtain. A vague human figure appeared on it. This human figure gradually became clearer. Eyebrows and eyes appeared, and facial features could be seen. The outline of the figure became clearer, and the azure water screen gradually faded. It was like a living scroll in the legends, with drawings and drawings of people that looked like living creatures. Sun Lang stared at the person in front of him in a daze. His eyes glowed with sparkling light. Since the great desolate mountain, he hadn't tasted tears for a long time. But now his eyes were a little sore. He didn't expect to see him again outside of the dream. The person in the water screen smiled gracefully and appropriately. He was elegant and had an outstanding bearing. His smile contained an inseparable pride and flaunting. He opened his hands and jumped like a child. Look, I did it. The movie you were talking about. Sun Lang was silent for a long time and smiled. Damn, such a big battle. The person was still very excited. You were right. In addition to killing, the Imperial Army can do more things. It can preserve a period of time. Beautiful flowers, unforgettable scenery, the hope of the birth of a baby, the romance of a girl's marriage, the beauty that is worth remembering forever in many, many people's stories. It can be recorded. In addition to keeping it for yourself, it can also be shared with more people. Sun Lang held his chin and looked up at the movie. He said as if nothing had happened, yes, yes. It can also be used to record enemy information, to assist in military training, to film cruel executions, to frighten civilians and intimidate the enemy. It can also be used to make very erotic and violent action movies to make money. Before he finished speaking, the person in the water curtain immediately raised his eyebrows and pointed at Sun Lang. You must be making sarcastic remarks against me again, right? You must be planning to use this movie to do terrible things, right? Sun Lang murmured. What are you talking about? I'm not an evil spirit, just like in the past. Quarreling, arguing, mocking, bullying, it was usually one-sided suppression. After all, the two of them had completely different personalities. One was elegant and well-behaved. The other was rebellious and full of vulgarities. One was an artistic youth, and the other was an idiot. It was as if they were born to be incompatible with each other. And the person in the water curtain seemed to be still pouring out his grievances. Previously, when I proposed this idea and did the experiment, you were at the side causing trouble. I was recalling beautiful memories and recreating them in the water, but you were at the side telling me about horror movies. I was obviously very afraid of those things, but you became even more enthusiastic. It was really scary. He frowned and counted with his fingers, listing the many evil deeds of Sun Lang. Especially that summoning souls too, it really scared me from the beginning to the end. After that, I didn't even dare to think about it. Sun Lang had been listening with a smile. When he heard this, he was slightly startled. When he found that Brother Jean was more resistant to horror stories, he was really excited. He racked his brains to think about how to adapt it. After all, he was indeed not an evil spirit. He wanted to use excessive stimulation therapy to shatter his friend's fear of these illusory things through a large amount of stimulation. However, it seemed to be useless. The other party was scared to death. At one point, he had to hug the holy sword and sleep with a quilt over his head. This was not a problem for the magical Sun Lang. He immediately told a horror story about a child lying in bed looking at you, and a story about an evil spirit who could control dreams. For example, you thought you were hugging the holy sword, but it was actually me, Freddy, and so on. Anyway, the effect was outstanding. But not all horror stories could scare him. For example, the plot advancement in some horror stories involved modern technological items. As a native of the Empire, the luminary of water did not understand the effects and was a curious child, so he kept asking questions. For example, the spirit summoning 2 that he had just mentioned. That movie was indeed a little scary, and with some of the sound and light effects created by Sun Lang using the holy sword, it was vivid enough to scare a timid child. The luminary of water did indeed tremble at first, but later he stopped trembling, because a certain plot in the story had aroused his curiosity. It was a plot that went like this. Later in the story, the male protagonist realized that the old ghost in the house seemed to be conveying some information to him, so he combined the 2 recordings and played them together. The 2 different sentences were combined to form a third sentence with a new meaning. So the artistic youth chased after Sun Lang and asked, "What is this tape recorder? It can preserve the sound? Then, wouldn't it be able to preserve the music played by the instrument? Then, wouldn't it be able to preserve the stunning song of the 4 heavens? This is a good thing. In this way, the contemporary masters of the music industry can pass down their painstaking efforts and achievements through the ages, and the people of the present will have the opportunity to hear more." In the end, the horror story could not be told. Sun Lang could not take it anymore and beat him up. From then on, he tried not to tell horror stories involving modern technology. But summoning souls, too, still left a deep impression on him. And that story did not scare the luminary of water from the beginning to the end. Later on, he could not forget this tape recorder and would ask about it every few days. "You seem," Sun Lang had an idea and whispered, "you don't seem to have dementia." Doubts arose in his heart. After all, there was something wrong with the other party's words. At this moment, the person in the water curtain finally stopped talking. The handsome face that Sun Lang had been jealous of for a long time showed an inexplicable sadness and sadness. After a moment of silence, Brother Jean said, "The technique is not perfect. I need to continue to improve it, but when you see this, I will already be dead." Sun Lang said softly, "And he's completely dead." The other party sighed softly. "I don't like martial arts, and I don't like fighting. But Jiatzi said that a man should be honored immediately, and His Majesty said that a warrior should serve the country. I am the master of Swordmaster Qinsheng. How can I refuse? Everyone is fighting in the front lines, and I can't enjoy life in the back. In these years, I have seen many heroic souls die in the battlefield. This is fate. After going to war, you have to face such risks. Maybe this is fate. In the dozens of years of Tianyuan War, there were sword saints who died." Speaking of this, tears appeared in his eyes. Considering that this video was a selfie of his sadness, it was enough to show how emotional he was. "Alas, why is it me?" Sun Lang said lightly, "Because you are stupid. But it's okay." The person in the water curtain forced himself to be spirited and forced a smile. "The fact that you can see this means that you are still alive. I am actually very happy that you are still alive. I'm not a qualified warrior. When I was fighting in the army, I relied on your protection. After all, I am a sword saint. If even I died, what a fierce battle it must have been. If even I died, then you, who had been protecting me on the battlefield, must have been in an unprecedentedly tough battle. That is why you couldn't protect me. But you are still alive. That is good. I always cry, but I have never seen you cry. But now you should cry, right? Although I don't like fighting, I am still a soldier. Like you said, a soldier should act like a soldier. I think, even if I die, I will act like a soldier before I die. Right? I think. I am not a deserter, am I?" Chapter 1093. You. Facing this question that traveled through time and space, Sun Lang's eyes were covered with a layer of gentleness. He didn't know when Brother Jean recorded this video, but he was sure that when he recorded this naive and simple guy couldn't have expected what happened later. He couldn't imagine it, and neither could Sun Lang. Even the Empress at that time couldn't have imagined it. The generals were loyal, the soldiers were fearless, and the famous generals came out in large numbers. The politics were clear, the monarch was unrestrained, and the whole country worked together. Under the crisis of national extinction, this ancient empire gradually got rid of all the accumulated disadvantages accumulated over hundreds of years with extraordinary courage and decisiveness. It built the whole country into a war machine that worked at full speed and successfully turned into a strategic counterattack. The situation was good. The future of the empire was bright. Romantic heroism filled the entire divine land. The people were vigorous, and martial arts were prevalent. Thousands of men fought against the extraterrestrial demons and fought for a future for the empire and their families. The soldiers who had experienced the war were dressed in the glorious glow, imagining the joy after winning the war. How glorious it was to have so many talented generals. The glory of fighting for the country covered up the ugliness of politics and the treachery of people's hearts to the greatest extent. Everyone was very pure, until the ferocious bloody light in the great barren mountain drew a dishonorable end to this great war full of lies. Then, everything changed. Some people died, and some people survived. The impact would last for a long time, and it would even change the future of the country. Sun Lang stared at the person in the water screen in a daze. It merged with the blood-stained, wounded face in his memory. At that time, he couldn't have imagined what had happened in the Great Bear Mountain. "You have become a traitor, and my accomplice." Sun Lang said softly. You stood up and protected me when I was about to die. The Emperor and the Devil's painstaking plan failed, and they shot themselves in the foot. I didn't want to let it go, and now I'm looking for them to take revenge. If I'm not careful, the country will be in turmoil. Blood will flow like rivers, and bones will pile up. All of this originated from your momentary stupor in the Great Barren Mountain. You're so powerful. You're a hero in a chaotic world. If we use the classic words of ancient Western fantasy novels to describe it, you're the one who pushed the wheel of history. Unfortunately, the person in the water screen was only a fragment from the past, a frozen time. He couldn't hear Sun Lang's words because there was a river of time between them. Even though Sun Lang's kung fu was powerful and almost invincible in the world, he couldn't cross the barrier of time. Therefore, the Sword Saint of Water was still talking to herself. I sent this video back home. In other words, when you see this, you'll have already returned to the capital. I once said that I'll take you to see the sights of the capital. Unfortunately, I can't fulfill this promise. But there are still two things to be happy about. First, you're still alive. Second, the Sky Demon has finally been defeated. He smiled from the bottom of his heart and said softly, How many men have died in the past few decades? How many people have died? We finally won. It's a pity that I can no longer see what it looks like at that time. That's why I left this thing behind, just in case I miss it. His smile became more sincere, simple, and simple. Jiang, thank you. Everyone should thank you. You've brought many victories to us. You've changed many people. Now it's time to rest. The reward from His Majesty, the honor of returning home in glory, and many things are waiting for you. Of course, there's also the glory, wealth, and beautiful wives you've always talked about. As well as my nagging, I have to give you some advice. The capital is different from the army. The court is not a military camp. It's fine if you make a scene in the army, but when you return to the capital, you should restrain yourself a little. Sun Lang didn't move as he listened to his nagging. He was like a long-winded mother. The Sword Saint said many things over and over again, but Sun Lang didn't get impatient at all. In the past, when I nagged you, you would always get impatient or argue with me. I couldn't win against you. But now, I've finally won against you. You should listen to me obediently, right? The Sword Saint of Water raised his eyebrows proudly and showed off for a while. Then, his expression became solemn. Of course, that's not what I want to advise you the most. Laughing and scolding is just a small matter. But when you return to the capital and receive your reward, everything will be very different. You'll live a life of luxury, be in a high position, be in power, be selfish, and be calculative. You'll face another battlefield. I hope you can stay true to your heart and remember what you said to me before. Of course, that's just my nagging. The Jiang I know will not become the person he hates. Saying this, the Sword Saint of Water smiled again. His smile was very warm and gentle. So that everyone can eat their fill, so that the talented children will not be buried in the countryside, so that the ambitious people can fulfill their ambitions, so that the rich will not be too rich, so that everyone will never have to kneel. He recited Sun Lang's shocking clamor sentence by sentence. Some of the words made people feel deep veneration, while others made people's hair stand on end. Finally, he smiled warmly. I believe in you. You can do it. The water curtain rippled, and the expression of the person in the image changed slightly. Oh no, this is not good. This is not stable, but I've said what I wanted to say. Let's stop here. Also, don't think that I'm being long-winded. Although I know that you've arranged everything well, I still have to say one more thing. My family and clan are in your hands. Yaowa is soft on the outside, but strong on the inside. You have to persuade her not to be a widow because of me. She has so many years ahead of her. She can't be a lonely lamp. Also, tell her not to. The image trembled, and then the smoke dissipated, and the water curtain disappeared. Sun Lang reached out and caught the falling stone. He was silent for a long time. How do I put it? He muttered to himself. Just like the time capsule I saw buried in the 1950s by the Soviet Union, it was full of bold prophecies and beautiful fantasies about the future. In the end, when everyone opened it a few decades later, it was all F***ing embarrassing. because the prophecies and ideas in it were basically not fulfilled. Outer space exploration did not exist. The Soviet Union was destroyed, and everyone was shooting from the sky in the village of Earth. Other than the cats and dogs, humans did not find any traces of other aliens. The once prosperous socialist family only had 4 members left. The only good news was that the United States showed signs of joining. He rambled on and then shrugged his shoulders. Things are still the same, but people have changed. He tossed the stone in his hand and exhaled softly. You didn't expect things to turn out like this, did you? Ideals, promises, and so on. Everything has changed. The emperor is plotting, and the undercurrents are surging in the capital. I'm making a big fuss here, and your family is unwilling to be left out. Your wife has defected to the enemy, and everyone is desperately putting firewood under the country. It's really strange. You're still the strongest country in the world, and you've just defeated the sky demon. You're still strong, but I can smell the scent of a pill. He stood up, picked up the box, and put the stone away. And summoning of souls, too. Why did you only mention this movie that didn't scare you? Shui Yao's message was eloquent and sincere. Even with Sun Lang's strong mind, he couldn't help but feel shaken. He owed that person too much, and he would never be able to repay him in his lifetime. But in addition to this relationship, there were also comrades in the army who cooperated well. He knew this friend of his very well. The other party was an extremely outstanding son of an aristocratic family. He was good at both martial arts and literature. He was knowledgeable and had an excellent memory. Even if Sun Lang casually mentioned a small matter, he could remember it without missing a single detail. How could such a humanoid computer remember things incorrectly? He focused on the movie Summoning of Souls too, saying that he was scared to death and didn't dare to think about it afterward. But the situation at the time was different. Not only did the story not scare the other party, but also aroused the curiosity of this artistic youth. He was very interested in the props of the tape recorder in the story. He once pestered Sun Lang for a long time, but didn't get an answer. He even began to ponder the theory of the props himself. So, it wasn't a situation where he didn't dare to think about it afterward. With his memory, he definitely wouldn't have remembered such a small matter wrongly. He also wouldn't have casually made up nonsense. This kind of taciturn and honest person was very strict. He would never lie or talk nonsense. He and Sun Lang were polar opposites. Then, Sun Lang's heart skipped a beat. Was this a hint? His mind quickly recalled the memories of that time. He had only seen that movie once in a while, but because it was a horror movie and a little scary, it left a deep impression on him. Especially that ghost nun. TSK, 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 TSK. Also, the female lead was a little lowly. She was quite cute and acted well. And the reason why Shui Yao couldn't forget this story was because of the scene of the tape recorder in the movie. When 2 completely different sentences were put together, a third sentence would appear. He took out the stone again, held it horizontally, and stared at it. Could it be? Sun Lang muttered to himself for a moment before he put away the stone. His figure flashed as he disappeared into the night. The Chow family. Tonight, the Chow family was brightly lit. All the important members of the family gathered together to pass the news. Everyone looked solemn. The birth of Shui Yao was in the hands of the abandoned woman of the Chow family. No matter what the inside story was, they wouldn't sit back and watch Shun Yaohua take advantage of it. The holy sword must be in their hands. No matter right or wrong, they only cared about the interests of the family. In the early years, because of Brother Jean, the Chow family's reputation soared. The Chow family's disciples entered the army under the protection of the Sword Sage. Once they displayed their talents, their promotion and transfer went smoothly. The family's connections were extensive, and even their business was very successful. With the Sword Sage's name, the Chow family's future was very good. They already had the image of a powerful family. But all of this disappeared with the death of the Sword Sage of Shui Yao. After the death of Shui Yao, the Chow family's officials in the imperial court were all promoted and given several titles of nobility and imperial titles. The royal family also showed great favor to the Chow family. However, a legacy is a legacy after all. The affection left by the dead will definitely become more and more indifferent. In another 10 or 20 years, who will care that you used to be a disciple of the Sword Saint? At that time, it would be difficult to keep the family's business, let alone improve. Therefore, the Holy Sword must be taken back. This was related to the family's 100-year plan. For this, they could do anything. Right or wrong didn't matter. Only children cared about it. Today, the main hall was packed with people. This was a matter of great importance to the clan. Those who were ambitious had all come to listen. After all, the clan was of the same breath and branch. Everyone still remembered the atmosphere of the clan when the Sword Saint was in charge. Moreover, it formed a sharp contrast with the current prosperity of the clan, who didn't understand the benefits of having a saint's sword. Immediately, someone asked, "Can't the palace do anything?" When the Holy Sword appeared, the Chow family was in an uproar. At first, they ran to the emperor to complain, but the emperor said that he was dizzy. Empress and the Empress Dowager were in charge of the palace's affairs. They said that it was inconvenient for women to interfere with state affairs and let the Chow family deal with it. Who couldn't see that this was perfunctory? Xin Yaohua had entered the palace before, but now Empress only cared about excuses. She didn't even give the two sides a chance to meet. Obviously, she wanted to protect that little b asterisk tch. Immediately, another person said angrily, "Brother Jean died. The imperial court wants to give preferential treatment to martyrs. They promised to give them high positions and generous salaries. How can they let the Chow family take back the Holy Sword? If the Holy Sword stays in the hands of that little b asterisk tch, the emperor can easily make decisions. This is called the emperor's scheming." These words were very reasonable, but when it came to their own family, it really didn't feel good. Everyone complained in a low voice. Some people even cursed in a low voice. The palace really didn't handle this matter well. In the end, it's because we're not capable enough. We have to beg the emperor to reward us with the Holy Sword. If we were as extravagant as General Shunsei, we would want official positions, reputation, and the Holy Sword. We would want all of them in our hands. The emperor would have no way to stop us. This is the ability of a good man. The person who made the speech changed the topic. "Old madam, did General Shinsei agree?" The palace was unreliable. They could only rely on their relationship with Brother Jean to go to the commander of war and plead. Everyone's eyes fell on old Madame Chow, who had just returned home. Old Madame Chow drank a mouthful of water and looked around the room. Everyone immediately stopped talking. The main hall became quiet. She slowly said, "Today, I haven't agreed yet." Before she could speak, a calm voice came from outside. Old Madame Chow's calmness that suppressed the crowd and was neither arrogant nor impatient was immediately broken. She couldn't pretend to be pretentious anymore. She was shocked and stood up. "Quick, go out and welcome them." "No need." Sun Lang strode in and said lightly, "Sorry to disturb you. I'm here to ask you something. After I'm done, I'll leave. By the way," he turned to look at everyone. His gaze swept across everyone's face. The Chow family's expressions were different. Some were curious, some were scrutinizing, some were flattering, and some were expressing goodwill. Of course, there was no disdain. Sun Lang pointed at one of them and smiled. "That's a good compliment. I like it." Chapter 1094. Even though Brother Jean had passed away for 2 years, his residence in the Chow family was still there. Sun Lang pushed the door open and entered. Without needing to light the lamp, the Mars sword gathered fire in the void. A ball of flame circled around Sun Lang, illuminating everything in the room. The air here was fresh, and there was no stuffy smell. There was no dust in the furnishings. Paintings and paintings hung on the walls, and the bookshelves were full of poetry collections. There were zither, flutes, flowers, and bamboos. It was very elegant and quiet. The furnishings were quite artistic. Seeing this, Sun Lang's mouth curved into a smile. This was like his room, an artistic youth who was not interested in martial arts and killing. The Sword Saint of Water Yao, one of the best swordsmen in the world, did not even have a sword in his room. His martial arts had reached the peak of the world, and with the holy sword in hand, he could see the essence of all things. It could be said that his eyes were like lightning. With one glance, he could see that this room had not been occupied for a long time and was clean from time to time. It seemed that after Shui Yao's death, someone had not forgotten him and kept his room until now as a memorial. Sun Lang turned around and looked at old lady Chow, who was standing silently with a calm face. He said lightly, "This reminds me of the Rongwa mansion. A few days ago, when I returned home, everything in the courtyard was as usual. Grandma has been thinking of me and cleaning my room and courtyard by herself every day." Old lady Chow's eyes moved and said slowly, "When a man goes to war in Tianyuan, it is for his country, his family, and the world. He fights to the death and gives his life for a righteous cause. It is also a grand and vigorous battle. But when he leaves behind a widow and an orphan, he has to think about them all the time and wait for them alone for decades. Old lady Jia is a lucky person. At least she can see the return of the general. Her son, on the other hand, would never come back." Sun Lang stared at the old lady who had lost her son. She also looked at him silently. Hearing Shui Yao's complaints in the past, Sun Lang had a picture of his mother in his heart. A strong and strict parent, a mother with a strong desire for control. Today at the Copper Sparrow Pavilion, it was indeed so. Old lady Chow was very smart and capable. Her eyes were sharp and her temperament was decisive. She placed her son's death as a bargaining chip on the balance without hesitation. She wanted to fight for a holy sword for the Chow family. Her words were full of reminders and even sarcasm. She had been hinting to Sun Lang that Sun Lang owed the Chow family his life. Now that she mentioned this matter, she mentioned old Madame Jia who saw her grandson come back. She mentioned herself who could no longer see her son. It seemed that she was bringing up the old matter again, bringing up the debt Sun Lang owed. However, Sun Lang knew that this was not the case. At this moment, old lady Chow was speaking as a mother. She kept the room as it was and cleaned from time to time. She had been missing her son all this time. Brother Jean had a few older brothers. When old Madame Chow gave birth to him, she was already old. She strictly supervised this son, raised him, educated him, and watched him grow up day by day until he became a world-renowned sword saint. Whether it was innate maternal love or acquired painstaking effort, this was her most promising, most proud, and most beloved son. However, she was also the one who personally sent him to the battlefield. Brother Jean did not like martial arts. He preferred to recite poems and play the zither and the flute. He wanted to be a scholar and not a warrior. However, his mother strictly urged him to practice martial arts. His potential was fully developed. He even gained the recognition of the Holy Sword and became the sword master of Chunxing. However, it was also because of this that he could no longer refuse to fight in the battlefield. The seven luminaries' sword master carried the hopes of the world. How could he be a deserter? In the end, he participated in the Battle of the Great Barren Mountain as one of the seven luminary sword masters. Sun Lang and old lady Chow looked at each other in silence. If she respected her son's thoughts and preferences, if she did not force him to study hard and cultivate him into such a talent, perhaps he would not have been chosen by the Holy Sword. He would not have met Sun Lang. He would not have entered the Great Barren Mountain. He would not have lost his life. Of course, the Chow family would not have become a Sword Saint's family. They would not have used this opportunity to soar and prosper. Therefore, today or every night in the past 2 years, when old lady Chow missed her son, did she ever regret it? When she broke her son's writing brush, when she threw away her son's zither, when she swung a thick stick, when she forced her son to stand on the martial arts stump, when she saw her son get first place in the imperial examination, when she saw her son enter the Star Sword Palace. Did she ever think of this day? There was probably no answer to all of this. Even old lady Chow herself could not explain it clearly. For a mother, who could tell which was the right choice? Brother Jean was already dead. It was too late to say anything. Now, standing in front of him was a mother who lost her son and was heartbroken because of it. She was also a strong woman who continued to work for the living and for the family after her son's death. These two were actually not contradictory. Now, in Brother Jean's room, Sun Lang was facing the former. She was a mother. He sighed and slowly bowed down. He said softly, "I'm sorry." Old Lady Chow silently turned to the side and only accepted Sun Lang's half-bow. She looked at Sun Lang with a complicated gaze. No matter what the truth of the Great Bear Mountain was, her son's death was definitely related to the person in front of her. But now, she was counting on him to help the Chow family. There were some things she should not have said. She should have pretended to be confused. But at the same time, she was also a mother. In the end, she said in a trembling voice, "Brother Jean's choice, was it worth it?" Sun Lang was startled. Then, his eyes showed confusion. Was it worth it? He disregarded his own life, the future of the family, and even the lives of the entire family. He saved a great devil who had the thought of destroying the world from a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. He only made a 3-year promise before he died. 3 years later, he would kill for you. It did not matter even if the world bled and the land of the divine land sank. Was it worth it? He thought of Brother Jean's smiling face in the video just now. He said, "I believe in you." The 3-year agreement was not yet up, but along the way, the evil in Sun Lang's heart had greatly subsided. He had seen people who were persistent. He had seen people who were still waiting. He had seen people who had atoned for their sins and apologized. He had seen people who had thanked him. The crazy thought of destroying the heavens and earth and slaughtering everything had already faded. Because he believed in him, he only made a 3-year promise. After a while, Sun Lang said slowly, "I don't know, but I think he thought it was worth it." Old Lady Chow nodded slowly. "That's enough." She walked forward slowly and looked at the zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting in the room. These are his favorite things. But before he was 14 years old, these things would never be placed here grandly. If I found them, they could only be thrown away and torn apart. I told him not to lose his mind because of these things, so he stopped. I told him to focus on practicing martial arts and bring honor to the family. So he did. He was the most obedient child. But in the end, I found that he was so obedient that he had no opinions. I hoped that he could be indomitable and responsible, but he couldn't do it. Speaking of this, Old Lady Chow turned to look at Sun Lang. I thought so. But in the Great Bear Mountain, he had his own ideas for the first time and did such an earth-shattering thing. Sun Lang still said, "I'm sorry. My son was taught by me. What my son did was the result of my supervision. Whether it was good or bad, I should take responsibility for it. General, you didn't let me down." Old Lady Chow looked at him and said slowly, "You are a general in the army and a noble in the court. Your status is incomparably revered. I am only a woman. I shouldn't be so presumptuous in front of you, but I am Brother Jean's mother. In terms of seniority, I can call you nephew. I won't call you that. I just want to say one thing to you as his mother. My son thought it was worth it. I hope General can also make it worth it." Sun Lang nodded calmly. "I'll do my best." Old Lady Chow frowned. She was not satisfied with this ambiguous promise. But looking at Sun Lang's calm face, she knew that this topic should end here. She was a mother, but she was also the mistress of the Chow family. Besides her son who had passed away, she had many more sons and many more family members. Old Lady Chow said, "General, what brings you here today?" Of course, Sun Lang had come for the stone. He had originally planned to beat around the bush a few times and mention this matter in a roundabout way to prevent old Madame Chow from realizing something and leaking the news. However, after the previous conversation, he no longer had that kind of troublesome thought. Perhaps he subconsciously felt that the other party was trustworthy. Reaching out to take out the stone, Sun Lang said, "Old lady, may I ask if you still have this thing?" Over the past 2 years, old Madame Jean's belongings have been turned over and over by old Madame Jean many times. Only this stone could not be understood after fiddling with it left and right. She could not see anything special about it. Now that she heard Sun Lang's question, old Madame Jean's expression changed. Did General discover something? Sun Lang hesitated for a moment. Then, with a wave of his hand, the door and windows closed. He injected earth spiritual energy. The stone floated up and bloomed. The water curtain fluttered, reflecting the voice and smiling face of the deceased. Old Lady Chow, who was smart, capable, and rational, let out a low cry. Her eyes instantly became wet. She trembled and reached out to the curtain. Her calm mask shattered, leaving behind only a mother who was surprised and happy. After all, she loved her son. Sun Lang said softly, "This is just a video, like a moving painting." Old Lady Chow stared at her son in the water curtain, motionless, like a frozen sculpture. Her body trembled. She tried her best to maintain her posture so that she would not cry and faint. Sun Lang stood beside her and watched with her. Brother Jean repeated what he had said before, complaining, nagging, and persuading like a repeater, until the video ended. Sun Lang took the stone back in his hand. Old Lady Chow looked at him with pleading eyes. Sun Lang shook his head and said, "Only I can activate it. You can't use it. I will find a way and return it to you later, but not now. Please think about it. Do you have any more of this stone?" He showed this stone to Old Lady Chow out of apology. She was a mother who had lost her son. In the past 2 years, she had been missing her son. It was reasonable for her to see her son's voice and smile. Secondly, it was for the purpose at hand. Only by letting her know what it was could she be motivated to recall and search for it. At this time, Sun Lang had already guessed that Brother Jean deliberately misspoke about what happened in the past. There must be a deeper meaning behind it. There was most likely a second stone that contained the image. Just like the plot of Evocation 2, if the 2 image stones were combined, there might be a new surprise. Sun Lang did not know what the content was. Maybe it was some extraordinary information, or maybe it was a joke made by Brother Jean on the spur of the moment. But since his old friend had left such a puzzle, he had to find it and take a look no matter what. Old Lady Chow frowned and thought carefully, not letting go of any corner of her memory. She had seen the image stone and knew the magic of this object. If there was a second stone, it meant that her son had left some other information. Even if it was just to see her son's voice and smile, it was enough to make her work harder. After a while, she slowly shook her head. "Brother Jean's relics, I have sorted through them. There's only one stone, but the important thing was this, but..." Sun Lang had already guessed it. Sure enough, anger appeared on the old lady's face. That woman was Brother Jean's wife back then. The relics were first sent to her before they were shown to me. That day, she left the marriage with nothing and handed over all the old things. She said it was clean, but it was obviously not clean. Let's not talk about other things. Damn it. How did my son's holy sword end up in your hands? Before today, the Chow family's attitude toward Xinyahua was that they were ashamed, could not talk about her, and would not have any contact with her. But now, they were gnashing their teeth and were absolutely irreconcilable. This woman insisted on leaving home and remarrying back then. No matter who tried to persuade her, she would not change her mind. The widow of the Sword Saint of Water actually wanted to remarry. Everyone in the Chow family lost face. It was a great shame and a joke. You, Shun Yaohua, claimed to have left the marriage with nothing back then. How did you get Brother Jean's holy sword now? Are you the one who stole his legacy and took the sacred sword for yourself? This guess was indeed very reasonable. Everyone in the Chow family was furious. They wanted to cut Shun Yaohua into pieces. This was too much of a bully, wasn't it? Old Lady Chow's meaning was very simple. This woman even dared to hide the secret of the holy sword. If there was a second stone, it must be in her hands. Sun Lang breathed a sigh of relief. Xinyahua again. That beautiful figure appeared in his mind. He did not know what to feel. He suddenly remembered that before, he bowed and apologized to Old Lady Chow. For a moment, Shun Yaohua's sad and beautiful face appeared in his mind. He had also expressed a faint apology to Shun Yaohua before, but it was guilt and avoidance. He seemed to have never seriously apologized to this woman who had lost her husband. Now that he thought about it, it was indeed a bit bad. But he did not know what Shun Yaohua would say to his apology. He was not a hesitant person. He made up his mind and immediately said, "Sorry to disturb you today. I will go and find Xinyahua. If I find anything, I will definitely bring it to you." Old Lady Chow said, "That woman entered the imperial palace. It seems that she has not come out." Sun Lang said without hesitation, "Then I will go into the imperial palace to find her. Old Lady Chow looked at the sky and said, "At this time, the Imperial Palace gate is closed. It is not early. The guards are standing guard. Outside officials are not allowed to enter." Sun Lang smiled and said, "It's okay. Everyone in the Imperial Palace knows me." Chapter 1095. During the War of Heaven's origin, Jia Ying, the commander of war, was known for his good social skills. He was very good at socializing. He was able to leave the deepest impression on others in the shortest amount of time. He was the kind of person who could not be forgotten even after 10 or 20 years. Returning to the capital this time, he still displayed his willingness to make friends and his lively and cheerful personality. In just half a month, he had become one with everyone in the Imperial Palace. He was very good, but sometimes being too good at socializing could be quite troublesome. For example, right now, he only wanted to enter the Imperial Palace to see someone, but because of his lofty reputation in the Imperial City and his extremely good relations with people, this was destined to be an extravagant hope, because everyone recognized the elegant and handsome general of the divine strategies. As long as they saw him, they would definitely let out a cry of pleasant surprise and surround him with great enthusiasm and hospitality, offering their sincere greetings. In this way, his whereabouts would be exposed, and his plan to visit a friend in a low-key way would fail. Therefore, he had to sneak into the royal palace without shooting. The royal palace was the residence of the emperor, a trusted subordinate of the empire. After the assassination of Mu Yao, it was heavily guarded. But no matter how strict the defense was, in the eyes of Sun Lang, there were still great loopholes. It should be noted that the imperial army was the cornerstone of the Hutu Empire. For hundreds of years, it had been deeply involved in all kinds of affairs of the empire. The core of the royal palace's defense system was the imperial army's weapon. This imperial army's defense system was as defenseless for Sun Lang as the CTOS system was for Go-Go. But there was still a problem. He could get in, but standing at the foot of the palace wall, Sun Lang was lost in thought. He could ignore the defense system of the royal palace and climb over the wall because of the spiritual power of Earthstar, the ancestor of the imperial army in the world. This thing gave him the highest administrator's authority. No matter how awesome and tough the imperial army was, they would have to kneel down and call him daddy when they saw him. However, his administrator's authority was snatched from a benevolent and righteous brother. Now, this benevolent and righteous brother was probably hiding in the royal palace. If he used the administrator's authority to get in, although it wouldn't alarm the defense system, he would definitely be discovered by the devil. Then, since it was difficult to enter, he would let her come out on her own. Sun Lang thought for a moment, then lowered his head and looked at his clothes. Western-style windbreaker, waistcoat, and trousers were almost unique in the traditional Hutu Empire. Therefore, anyone could recognize him at a glance. After all, the operation tonight was rather rushed, and he did not have time to change into a night suit. It's too eye-catching. If that's the case, he took out a handkerchief from his pocket and covered his face. Then he took out some cuties from his pocket and squatted on the ground. He circulated the spiritual energy of the holy sword and arranged them. Finally, he clapped his hands in satisfaction. This way, there wouldn't be any problems. After doing all this, Sun Lang took out the magical stone from his pocket. He poured the earth's spiritual energy into it, and the blue water curtain immediately unfolded. Brother Jean's image showed a bright smile as always. He said the exact same words according to the recording from a few years ago. As Brother Jean said, this stone was just a rough test product. There was no fast-forward button or progress bar. Sun Lang used his Yuan Qi to cover the sound and waited silently. Until finally, Shui Yao said that sentence. "My family and clan, I'll leave it to you." A light flashed in his eyes. He circulated his spiritual energy, and the volume of this sentence instantly increased. Like the wind, it swept through the silent and majestic royal palace. Then, he counted silently. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In the direction of the royal palace, there was a familiar fluctuation, flowing and changing. It was the power of Chun Xing's water element. The water lotus-like figure appeared in his eyes. Shun Yaohua's white clothes fluttered as she rushed out of the royal palace. Her beautiful face, which seemed to always be sad, had a great change of expression at this time. She was shocked, happy, and in disbelief. She saw Sun Lang in the distance and also saw the watercolored light curtain. The person on the light curtain was the lover she would always care about. 2 years ago, they were separated by life and death. They could only meet for a short time in dreams. And now, she saw his appearance again. Sun Lang sighed softly in his heart. He raised his hand and indicated the stone in his hand to Shun Yaohua. Then the water curtain shattered. General Shen's figure turned into an ethereal flowing light and swept away into the distance. Shun Yaohua gritted her teeth and chased after him without hesitation. Behind her, the sun was hot and the moon was cold. The sun and moon sword saint followed. Wei Xia shouted, "Don't go! That's a trap!" Shun Yaohua turned a deaf ear to his words. Tears flowed down her cheeks as she quickened her pace. Today, she saw the husband she yearned for day and night, the husband she would never be able to forget. She desperately wanted to know what was going on. No one could stop her. No one could stop her. Wei Shihe was very anxious. He didn't care about the consequences. He saw the blazing sun cutting through the darkness. His eyesight was outstanding. He had already seen Sun Lang's back. That guy was unconventional and wore strange clothes. Anyone could recognize his barbarian appearance at a glance. Although he didn't know what trick he used to trick Shun Yaohua out, he couldn't let him have his way. Even if he had to use force, he had to make Shun Yaohua stay. But just as the light of the sun saint's sword shone in the night sky, something strange happened. The 7 luminaries' sacred swords came from the same source. They could sense each other. There was no need to talk about the 5 elements of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. The 5 elements mutually reinforced and restrained each other, and naturally formed the changes of life and death. The sun and moon also had their own mysteries, and coincided with a number of the 5 elements. The great sun's scorching flame was able to gather and produce flames because it was of the fire attribute. At this time, when the sunlight shone, it immediately triggered the fire spiritual energy that Sun Lang had set up in advance. The flame power rose and the void was ignited. The flame ignited and ignited the explosives. The roar of the explosives destroyed everything. The canned herring exploded on the spot. The biochemical weapons that hadn't been used for a long time finally made a profit. Logically speaking, Sun Lang had been holding back for a long time. The imperial capital was the foot of the emperor. It was densely populated and bustling. It was the heart of the world and the center of the imperial court. He came to the imperial capital with a vengeful heart. How could he not let the people of the imperial capital experience the power of love and justice? How could he not let the officials of the imperial court realize the great power of the biochemical weapons? Every time when the imperial court was held, there would be cruel and vicious emperors on the stage, and there would be servile and servile lackeys around them. Sun Lang's heart, which was not afraid of violence, was burning fiercely. He wanted to purify the dirty world around him like a holy light. But that was a weapon of mass destruction. It could easily hurt the innocent. Moreover, the method was too easy to distinguish between friend and foe. It was very likely that the comrades who were worth fighting for would be pushed to the enemy's side. But today's situation was different. The Sun and Moon Sword Sage was originally the Emperor's double red rod. The Imperial Palace was originally the home of that dog Emperor. Those guards of the Imperial Palace were even more stupid and loyal to the feudal monarch. They were shameful lackeys of feudalism who were willing to be ruled, exploited, and enslaved. So today I'll make you scum wash your teeth for 3 days and 3 nights. The shells of hell were flying everywhere. Immortal substances were spluttering in midair. The location of the explosives, the throwing angle of the canned herring, and everything else had been carefully calculated. As an Earthling, Sun Lang was very familiar with modern technology and gunpowder weapons. He did not despise fancy skills like the people of the Imperium at all. During the War of the Heaven's Origin sector, he had smuggled and tortured a lot of cannons for fun. During his 2 years of traveling around the world, he had also secretly learned a lot of advanced experience and tricks in the kingdom of Livefire. Now was the time for him to make a contribution. Multiple canned herring exploded in midair, and the biological projectiles surged toward Wei Shihe. After all, he was the renowned Hikari Kensei, the Sun Sword Master, an unparalleled expert who had fought in the bloody battles of the Heaven's Origin sector. He could even block the soul-stealing venom needles easily. How could he be ambushed by canned herring? Brilliant sword auras swept out magnificently, and the metal scraps and the evils of the world that came at him were vaporized instantly. However, the Sun Sword Master was so confident that he neglected one thing. Salted fish was dried by the sun. As the sunlight swept across, the molecular heat accelerated, and the overwhelming smell was even more fragrant. As one of the 7 luminary sword saints, Wei Shihe was one of the best in the world. His physical attributes were among the best in the world. Naturally, his sense of smell was one of them. Besides, with the aura of the Sun Sword Master, the spiritual gas inside his body was so dazzling that he could sweep away all the evils and was not scared of any poison in the world. He had never had the habit of blocking his sense of smell before battle. Today, he was enjoying the most delicious smell in the world, but he felt that he had opened a restaurant of death. Kiviak, stinky meatballs, and raised slices were all rolling out. It also felt like he had opened a toilet that had not been used for 10,000 years. Wei Shihe let out a loud cry and almost fell from the sky. His extraordinary sense of smell gave him the most intense enjoyment and experience, almost causing his true qi to flow in the opposite direction and enter qigong deviation. His biological instincts made him turn around and retreat. He couldn't care less about Sun Lang and Shun Yaohua. Wei Wangshu was holding the line behind his brother. Soon, he also experienced the same kind of enjoyment. His cold and noble expression changed drastically. The 2 sword saints retreated. Before they could figure out what was going on, explosions occurred outside the palace walls. 7 or 8 yellow tin cans flew in the air. Everything happened too fast. In the blink of an eye, a melodious sound rang out somewhere in the palace. Golden light flashed and cold light flashed. The vibration of the holy sword and the explosion of the explosives had triggered the response of the defensive array of the palace. The huge defensive system of the Imperial Army was immediately activated. It sensed that an unidentified flying object had been thrown into the palace. The dragon crossbows and phoenix arrows set up in the tower were immediately fired to intercept it. The tragic scene had already made the Wei siblings unable to bear to watch. The palace was on fire, the guards were mobilized, and the defense forces in the forbidden area were gathered here. However, they were about to encounter something terrible that they had never heard of before. It was so terrible that they were almost at a loss. The Sun and Moon Sword Saints had already retreated to a safe place. They looked around. Or was that bastard Sun Lang? Wei Shihe swallowed. I'm a little scared. The methods that Sun Lang had displayed today had made his heart cold. As one of the strongest warriors in the world, he was not afraid of fighting with Sun Lang face to face. He was also not afraid of being defeated by him. However, when he thought that this guy who had no bottom line could possibly throw him into a cesspool, he felt a kind of fear that would rather be killed than humiliated. Wei Wangshu's expression was also very ugly. He ran away. Damn it. The Sun Sword Master comforted his sister. He can run away, but the temple can't run away. Don't worry too much. He will be in trouble. For some reason, he thought of Sun Lang's sinister threat from before. He said, F***CK your sister. At that time, Wei Shihe was very sure that this Jinling boy did not have the guts to do such a thing. However, after experiencing today's events, he was a little uncertain. As a peerless warrior and an important official of the Empire, if he could do such a disgusting and shameless thing, then what did he not dare to do? Not to mention Wei Shihe's nervousness. Sun Lang had already run far away with the help of the trap, just now. He deliberately led Shun Yaohua, and the two chased one after the other. Both of them were sword saints. Their qigong was as fast as the wind. In just a moment, they could disappear without a trace, making it impossible for others to catch up. The entire imperial capital was full of hiding places. Sun Lang led Shin Yaohua through the streets and alleys. They stopped in a remote area and then stopped. Shin Yaohua stood not far away. She looked at Sun Lang with resentment and hatred in her eyes. She gritted her teeth and said, "I heard my husband's voice, and just now." Sun Lang raised the stone. "Do you recognize this?" Shin Yaohua looked at it attentively and said, "This is his relic." Sun Lang asked, "Do you have it too?" Shin Yaohua shook her head, but her flickering eyes betrayed her. "You are not good at lying." Sun Lang stepped forward and said in a deep voice, "There is a message left by your husband hidden in here. If there is a second one, please show it to me." He took in the star, suppressing holy power in his palm, and the image in the stone was activated again. Shin Yaohua saw the image of her husband. Her eyes were dazed, and tears flowed down her face. Her delicate body trembled, and she almost fainted. She whispered, "So?" Sun Lang frowned. "So? What do you mean?" He closed his palms, and the spiritual power was cut off. The water curtain disappeared immediately. General Shun Se hardened his heart. "Please show me the second stone. I will return it to you after I finish reading it. This is very important." Shin Yaohua still shook her head. "There is no second stone. I've said it before. You're not good at deceiving people. It's better if you don't do this. No matter how you feel about me, that stone is the last trace of your husband in this world. He might have left behind some important information. Please don't let his efforts go to waste." Sun Lang repeated, "Please take it out." Shin Yaohua smiled sadly. "I can't take it out. What do you want?" Sun Lang was silent for a moment and sighed. "I didn't want to make things difficult for you, but if I let you go like this, it will be easy to arouse its vigilance and curiosity. Besides, he just told me. So I can't let you go back to the palace, at least before you change your mind, at least before I finish reading the message he left. Fire created earth, and earth suppressed water. The spiritual power of fire and earth came out together, and the spiritual power of water came out. Sun Lang mobilized the spiritual power of the holy sword and said lightly, "Shinto province has been cleaned up. There is a beautiful basement inside. Please go and relax." Chapter 1096. The night was dark and the wind was strong. At the Copper Sparrow Terrace, General Shunsei Sun Lang carried a big black sack and descended from the sky. He landed lightly on the eaves of the 7th floor of the Copper Sparrow Terrace and opened the window of the room. The room was brightly lit. Princess Pingyang was in a daze in front of the table. Hearing the sound, she turned around and saw her master jump into the room. She put down the black sack on her shoulder and reached out to pull it. The black cloth was torn, and her white dress fluttered. A beautiful water lotus flower bloomed, revealing a graceful figure and moving color. A beautiful woman, a beautiful woman, a beautiful woman with a cold temperament and a sad expression. She was secretly brought into the Copper Sparrow Terrace by her master in a sack and could not move. She was probably under a restriction. Princess Pingyang was startled at first, but then she stood up calmly and said with a smile, "Master is back. Should I prepare a room for Miss Shun? There are also tools like tendon softening powder, neutralizing strength pill, golden rope and jade lock, pulse fixing needle, etc. Should I prepare them for Master?" It was strange to kidnap a woman in the middle of the night. Sun Lang had already thought of an excuse, but he did not expect that Princess Pingyang would accept it so easily. This was a bit strange. If it was Chow Patao, it would be fine. Zhao Yunlong was obviously the kind of henchman who would let Sun Lang kill people and let Sun Lang set fires for her. However, Comrade Pingyang's state of mind had not risen to that level. She still had the heart of a curious baby. Why was she so obedient today? According to the normal development of the plot, when the female character saw the male protagonist kidnap a beautiful woman in the middle of the night, shouldn't the female character's expression change greatly, be in disbelief, and open her mouth to curse. He squinted and said, "Can't you misunderstand? I sneaked out in the middle of the night and then kidnapped a woman back. It's a bit strange, isn't it?" Princess Pingyang smiled gently and said, "Because it's master." General Shansei felt that something was not right and asked, "What do you mean?" The little princess said obediently, "Master is a good man. Why would he do something like this?" It sounded like he was praising and trusting General Shin's upright character. But Sun Lang didn't know if it was an illusion or not, but he felt a faint sense of malice. He stared at his little disciple for a while and didn't find any flaws. Then he shook his head and stretched out his hand. Shun Yaohua's body involuntarily moved to the side and sat steadily on the chair. Sun Lang reached out to undo the woman's restriction. Shun Yaohua's body trembled slightly, and she finally regained her ability to move. As a beautiful widow, she was attacked by a well-known older virgin in the middle of the night. She should have been panicked, but there was no panic on her face. She didn't fight back, and she didn't even open her mouth to call for help. She just quietly stared at Sun Lang. Her expression was calm, but sad, and even a little disappointed. "You committed a crime in the middle of the street and kidnapped me. If word gets out, it will damage my reputation. You and he were comrades on the battlefield, and I often heard him mention you. Is this how you treat his widow?" Sun Lang looked calm and said lightly, "Don't try to shake me with words. It's useless. If we talk about reputation, you, a widow, are still in the palace in the middle of the night. You're not afraid of rumors." Princess Pingyang stood aside and listened obediently. When she heard the words, she stuck out her tongue at Sun Lang's back. Master was still the same as before. He didn't know how to speak at all. Before Xin Yaohua could answer, Sun Lang said again, "I brought you here to protect you. I had no choice but to use extreme measures. As for whether I let him down or not, you don't have the right to say it. I have the right to say it. Everything I did was to protect his last wish. I have a clear conscience. As for you, I don't have the slightest improper thoughts. I only have the heart to protect and respect you. You can rest assured that even if all the women in the world die, I won't have the slightest improper thoughts about you." Wow! Princess Pingyang was secretly speechless. Master was even worse at speaking than before. As expected, Xin Yaohua's face also became cold. He didn't expect this seemingly weak and aloof woman to express anger. She said lightly, "Then I'll repeat what I said during the day. Please don't self-righteously protect me and interfere with my life." Sun Lang shook his head and said, "Well, you don't have the right to say that." He wanted to say something else, but he suddenly tilted his head and listened attentively for a moment. He smiled faintly and said, "You washed up quickly." Sun Lang and Xin Yaohua were stunned at the same time. They didn't understand what Sun Lang was talking about. But after a moment, a dull sound came from outside. Someone used lightness skill to rush up to the 7th floor and came to Sun Lang's door. Marshal Shan Xiongxin, who was on duty tonight, shouted, "A large group of people is approaching. There are Imperial Guards." Sun Lang's answer was simple and to the point. "Get your weapons." Commander of War's order was swift and decisive. Shan Xiongxin shouted, "Commander of War's order, get your weapons." Xin Yaohua said coldly, "Kidnapping and detaining Swordmaster Chen Xing without permission. Even if you have great power and are an official, I'm afraid you won't be able to deal with the public's criticism. Please let me go." "I can." Sun Lang stared at her and said, "How can you accuse me of something I didn't do? What did I detain Swordmaster Chen Xing?" Xin Yaohua was a pure widow. She had been a standard lady since she was young. After she got married, she treated Brother Zhang with respect. She had never seen such a troublemaker like Sun Lang, who spoke without thinking. She widened her eyes and didn't know if she should be angry or mocking him. Sun Lang had already waved his hand and said, "You sit here for a while. I'll send those idiots away. I'll talk to you in detail when I come back." Without waiting for Sun Lang's instructions, Ping Yang straightened her back and said, "Don't worry, Master. I'll take good care of Sister Shan." Sun Lang was not confident about the little princess's ability to do business. He said, "Although I've sealed her water power, you still have to be careful. If she makes trouble, you can use the methods in your book collection to deal with her. Don't be soft-hearted. Princess Pingyong blinked her eyes and said, "Book collection?" Sun Lang counted with his fingers and said, "It's those beep and master." Pingyong, who had always been well-behaved, turned into a little tiger baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. Sun Lang giggled as he ran out of the door. Regarding this issue, he had long wanted to criticize his disciple. Your master is the legendary Liu Bei, who controls 103,000 volumes of forbidden books. You actually want to read a book written by someone else. Really? Sun Lang went downstairs and walked out. A group of generals dressed casually and walked out with their weapons. They followed the general out with a murderous look. Of course, this was just an act. Because Sun Lang did not give the order to prepare for war, tonight's matter was mostly just a show. Because it wasn't a formal call for battle, the general's expressions were very relaxed. Moreover, they didn't mind chatting and laughing. When they saw Sun Lang, they said, "Commander, you've caused trouble again." Sun Lang snorted through his nostrils. He stretched out his finger and pointed at them one by one. "Bullshit, bullshit. It stinks unbearably. Vulgar words. Kai Jing, say something to let them hear." Kai Jing smiled and said respectfully, "Commander of war, there are unruly people trying to frame you again." Everyone burst into laughter. Remember, this is the right way to think. I'm a first-class citizen of the imperial capital. Why would I do something against the law? There must be unruly people trying to frame me. Wait on top of the wall. Everyone jumped onto the temporary pavilion. They could already feel the shaking of the earth. A fire dragon came roaring from afar. It was a continuous stream of torches and galloping iron horses. The two people in the lead emitted a strong pressure. The vigorous sword spirit reflected each other and went straight to the sky. They were the two sword saints of the Wei family, the Taiyin sword master and the Taiyang sword master. Immediately, someone sneered, "They don't come with good intentions." Sun Lang sneered, "They come with the momentum and show off their power. They have to see if I agree." He immediately let out a long howl, and the Mars sword aura tore through the sky. The Copper Sparrow Pavilion was bestowed to me by His Majesty's golden words to support my family. This is private property, and trespassers will be killed without mercy. When enemies met, their eyes blazed with hatred. Wei Shihe wasn't someone who couldn't afford to lose. He could accept being defeated by Sun Lang. After all, he had nothing to say when his skills weren't as good as Sun Lang's. However, this bastard actually used that filthy thing to plot against him. This was blatant humiliation. He must use blood to wash away this humiliation. He said sternly, "Sun Lang, you kidnapped a woman and detained the Water Radiant Sword Saint. This is a serious crime. Even if you're a first-class official, you can't get away with it. Quickly hand over Sword Master Shun." The Copper Sparrow Pavilion was silent for a moment. "Wait." Pan Mei dug his ears and looked at his colleagues with a blank expression. What did he say the marshal did? Su Dingfang's tone was full of uncertainty. Kidnap a woman? Everyone looked at each other in dismay before bursting into laughter that shook the heavens. Kidnap your mother. Android laughed so hard that the fat on his face jiggled. He shouted at the top of his voice, "You guys should put more effort into framing him. Commander of war would kidnap a woman? Why don't you say that His Majesty is rebelling?" The Copper Sparrow Pavilion was enveloped in a cheerful atmosphere. Sun Lang's face was a little dark. Damn it, what's with this uncomfortable feeling? Wei Shihe was also caught off guard by the laughter. He then shouted, "Don't be unreasonable. I saw with my own eyes that he led Sword Master Chun Xing away. At the same time, the Imperial City was attacked. Is this fake?" It was unknown which mischievous person shouted. "We heard with our own ears that Commander of War had 10 women at night. He did not stop for 6 hours. He has been having fun in the Copper Sparrow Pavilion today. Is this fake?" Then there was another round of laughter. Sun Lang kicked that blind idiot off the wall and then shouted, "F*** you Wei Shihe. Why are you framing me? You said you saw me. Could it be that you saw my face?" Wei Shihe pointed at Sun Lang and said hatefully, "You are wearing a barbarian robe. This is the only one in the entire imperial city. How hard is it to recognize you? I can recognize you even if you turn into ashes." Sun Lang shouted, "Are you AF Astra's king, idiot? I went to the imperial palace in the middle of the night, and I still wore my own clothes? Why didn't I wear my night clothes? Someone obviously copied my clothes to frame me. If you can't even see this, I think you must have been struck dumb by the sky demon in the Great Bear Mountains." Wei Shihe was furious. "You," Sun Lang continued to shout. "What about me? I saw with my own eyes that you were surrounded by a group of sky demon in the Great Bear Mountains. You were hung up and beaten. You were crying and begging Grandpa's son to save you. The bad boys under General Shin's command laughed mockingly at the right time." Hikari Kinsei was so angry that his face turned red. He knew that he could not argue with Sun Lang about this. He raised his sword and said sternly, "The Seven Luminary Sword Master is the pillar of the nation." Sun Lang giggled and said, "Don't you feel embarrassed boasting like this? I am embarrassed to boast like this." The generals were still hugging each other and laughing heartily. Wei Shihe gritted his teeth and roared, "You are the biggest suspect in kidnapping Swordmaster Qinsheng. I am carrying out my duty. You must open the Copper Sparrow Pavilion and let us in for a search." Sun Lang laughed. "If you're looking for trouble, just say it. You are better off fighting your way in." Wei Shihe was simply furious. Ever since the battle at the Great Desolate Mountain, his heart had been shrouded in a layer of haze. He originally thought that several years of hard work and self-cultivation would be enough to break through this barrier. However, this damn monster had unexpectedly returned to the imperial capital and was even more arrogant than before. These past few days, he had repeatedly suffered setbacks, and his state of mind was incomparably irritable. Today, he had been repeatedly teased by Sun Lang. For a moment, he suddenly felt a tyrannical killing intent that was strong enough to destroy everything sweep over his heart. He roared, "Do you think I don't dare?" Chapter 1097. Hikari Kinsei's roar was like thunder, the sound waves surging through the clouds. "You think I don't dare?" His words were filled with hatred and rage, containing his vigorous, true power. After all, he was the Sun Sword Master. His power was rarely seen in the world. With one roar, regardless of friend or foe, all the soldiers who were slightly weaker had a change in expression. Their footing became unstable. It was obvious that the roar had shaken their souls. Seeing that, Sun Lang immediately shouted, "Are you wailing for your mother?" In terms of power, General Shinsei was stronger than 7 Luminary Swordmaster. His vulgar words were able to dissolve Wei Shihe's sound wave roar, stabilizing the mental state of the soldiers. It was truly domineering. He was about to imitate Zhuge Liang's wisdom and speak in front of the two armies. Even if he could not scold Wei Shihe to death, he still wanted to make him lose face and lose face. Who knew that Sun Sword Master's eyes would turn scarlet red? The dazzling sun sword chi would soar into the sky. The light of the sun revolved. Without saying anything, he ferociously slashed towards Sun Lang. What the fuck? Sun Lang was taken aback. This turn of events was truly out of his expectations. After all, in his impression, the Sun Radiant Sword Saint should not be so stubborn, jumping up and down at the slightest provocation. What was going on? He was startled. Could it be that your mother is really dead? Wei Shihe released a beast-like roar. The sword aura was resplendent, becoming denser and denser, his killing intent rising like a tide. Sun Lang took out the Chaos Sacred Sword. As expected of General Shunsei, Sky Aeon Martial Merit was an experienced soldier. His reaction was extremely fast. His quick wit was outstanding. Facing Wei Shihe's blazing light wheel, he did not even think and shouted, "Wei Shihe is rebelling." The generals had worked with him for a long time, and they had a tacit understanding from the bloody battle of Sky Aeon. When Wei Shihe made his move, everyone immediately retreated. The aftermath of the battle between the two sword saints was not small. There was no need for them to stay on the spot. After all, commander of war, was going to win. These generals of the Northern Theater of Operations still maintained the alertness and battle instincts of war. As they retreated, they all summoned the Imperial Army. The multicolored light shone majestically, the killing intent shooting out like a bull. They all summoned their subordinates, and then responded together. Wei Shihe is rebelling. With a dazzling light explosion, the two sacred swords clashed. With a loud boom, the dazzling light dispersed the darkness and lit up the starry sky, as if lightning snakes that tore apart the sky lit up in the deep night sky, illuminating the entire capital as if it was daytime. The sun exploded and the red fire burned. Except for a few elite masters, everyone else closed their eyes in this violent light. With the clash of the sacred swords as the starting point, it was as if heavenly fire had swept across the area, turning it into a lonely darkness, forming a burning domain. In the illusory but continuous light fog, the sword energy sunran, and the illusionary light flashed. The two sword saints who stood at the top of the martial Tao of Hutu Earth started a fierce battle, formed the formation to defend against the enemy. Android's Imperial Army was a pair of claws, 10 fingers like blades, connected by iron chains, like the claws of an eagle, like the hands of a tiger, and countless barbs and poisonous thorns. Just by looking at its appearance, one could tell that it was a cruel and terrifying weapon. He was one of the few masters under Sun Lang's command, and he was not afraid of the aftermath of the battle between the two sword saints. He strode toward the people of the Forbidden Palace outside and shouted, Wei Wangshu, your brother killed an important official of the Imperial Court for no reason. Are you going to make a move as well? Wei Wangshu was still expressionless, but a trace of doubt and anxiety flashed in the depths of her eyes. Her brother's sudden attack, an attack on Sun Lang, was beyond her expectations. But now that things had come to this, Wei Wangshu could not stop her brother, because that would mean showing weakness. The two of them advanced and retreated together. Not only did they bear the dignity of the Sun and Moon Sword Saint, they also represented the face of the Imperial Court. Tonight, they had come with great momentum, so how could they leave with their heads covered in dirt? She did not say a word. She stared at the situation in the light fog, and was secretly shocked. That person had become even stronger. The Grand Moon Sword Saint's palms were sweaty, and she was shocked. She was also one of the few masters in the world, and she was watching this battle as a spectator. Very soon, she saw the clues that made her feel shocked. Now, the two sides had just started fighting, and the battle was in a stalemate. They were evenly matched, and it seemed like they were locked in a stalemate. But Wei Wangshu realized that Sun Lang was already unimaginably strong. The sun was blazing, and it cleansed all the evil and darkness. The sun's sacred sword was unparalleled in its ferocity. It was the first imperial army in the world with pure yang energy. Sun Lang was holding the sacred sword of fire, and he was evenly matched with it. He was actually able to control the range of the aftershocks to a mere 100 feet. Yes, it was only 100 feet. Two of the most powerful cultivators in the world, two of the fiercest monarch weapons of the Hutu Earth monarch weapons. The battle between two sword saints was limited to a range of only 100 feet. Then, what should she do now? Wei Wangshu's mind was in a mess. Since she was a martial artist, she was not an indecisive person. But the situation in front of her was very troublesome. First, her brother took the risk without saying anything, and then there was this awkward situation. For a moment, the Grand Moon Sword Master was hesitant, and she was in a dilemma. Should she join forces with her brother to attack Sun Lang? The incident at the Great Desolate Mountain was not far away, and the nightmarish scene had not dissipated. Now, Sun Lang was even stronger than before. Even if the Sun Moon Sword Saint joined forces, they would not be able to gain an advantage. Or, while her brother was busy with Sun Lang, they could break into the Copper Sparrow Terrace to find Shinyawa. This seemed to be the most correct way. After all, they were here tonight for Shinyawa. If they could find the kidnapped Water Radiant Sword Saint in the Copper Sparrow Terrace, where Sun Lang was staying, then Sun Lang's situation would become very awkward, and the two of them would be able to turn the tables tonight. But Wei Wangshu's phoenix eyes turned, taking in the surrounding situation into his eyes. Beside her were the guards of the imperial city. Everyone looked a little uneasy. After all, they were ordered to act at their own discretion tonight and not to capture the traitor Sun Lang. However, Hikari Kensei had started fighting without saying anything, and the target of the battle was Master Sun, who had been very arrogant recently. Fighting against such a legendary figure, everyone would feel weak. They could not count on him. On the other hand, the morale of the enemy was obviously very high. The group of former Japanese generals under Sun Lang were fully equipped and controlled the Imperial Army. They led the elite soldiers of the Imperial Army into a battle formation. They were the elite soldiers who had fought against the Sky Demon in outer space. They had been through many battles and faced countless strong enemies. They were very experienced, had high morale, and cooperated well with each other. They formed a strong defense formation, and even with the power of the Lunar Sword, it would not be easy to break through, unless she did not care about anything and went on a killing spree. But she did not dare to. If Sun Lang went crazy again, or even acted out the old incident at the Great Desolate Mountain, who would be able to bear the responsibility and consequences? She had to consider the hundreds of lives in the Wei family, not to mention the distant future. Moreover, even if they were lucky enough to break into the Copper Sparrow Terrace, looking at all the pavilions and buildings, who would know where Sun Lang hid Shinyaohua? They could not possibly search every room, could they? When Wei Wangshu thought of this, she was even more at a loss. She looked at the center of the battle and was secretly anxious. "Brother, why did you not discuss with me before making such an unwise move? You are not usually like this. What do you want to do? Forget it, forget it. I will fight Sun Lang together with my brother. Even if I lose, I can let the officials in the Imperial Court know that Sun Lang is powerful enough to suppress the 7 luminaries and break the rules. This will make them more cautious." Under the hazy moonlight, the Tying sword quietly formed with the help of the radiance of the solar sacred sword. Wei Wangshu was just about to support her brother and perform a joint attack when she heard Wei Shihe roar again. "Jia! Ing!" His voice was filled with indescribable madness, anger, hatred, and even fear. "I don't believe that I can't kill you." Wei Wangshu's expression suddenly changed. What was going on? How could her brother say such a thing? Although the aftermath of the battle between the two sword saints was firmly restrained, not only did it not damage the Copper Sparrow Pavilion, but also did not affect the soldiers of both sides. However, even so, the fierce battle between the two strongest Imperial army in the world still caused a huge explosion of power. The flames burned brightly like the sun in the sky. Not only did the warriors in the Imperial capital feel it, but even the ordinary civilians could see the dazzling radiance that was like the sun. They also heard Hikari Kensei's roar that was filled with hatred and madness. "Jiang, I don't believe that I can't kill you." This sentence came out of nowhere and was inexplicable, but anyone could hear the intense emotions contained in the words. And that name caused many people's expressions to change. That was a taboo, the protagonist of an old story, a person who should have been buried in the dust of history. That person now had a new name, Sun Lang. In the vast imperial capital, there were millions of people, but only a very small number of people could relate this to the past from this roar that came out of nowhere. Who wanted to kill Jiang? Why was Jiang killed? And why was Jiang not killed? Wei Wangshu's mind was in a mess, and she felt countless eyes looking at her. The soldiers under Sun Lang's command all had cold expressions, and a cold, murderous aura that condensed into frost was spreading. Just now, the Empire's Sun Sword Master personally admitted to the crime that they failed to commit in the Great Desolate Mountain. Of course you can't kill Jiang, because Jia Ying is already dead. In stark contrast to the crazy roar, there was an extremely calm sigh. It was as if he was just stating a matter of course. A formless yet powerful aura spread out and instantly dispersed the shrouding light fog, suppressing the omnipresent sunlight sword that shone on everything. Sun Lang held fire glory with both hands and swung it upwards. The Sun Glory Sword Master's body was thrown high into the air and was immediately swallowed by thousands of rays of intense light. Wei Wangshu let out a sorrowful cry. "Brother! Your brother isn't dead." Sun Lang held the sacred sword in his hand and looked at the sky. The flames dispersed and the light illuminated the night sky. Wei Shihe flew in the sky with sword in hand, flames that had yet to be extinguished lingering around his body. The Sun Glory Sword Master's body also started to blossom with dazzling light. That light covered his body as if it was a robe that Great Sun Sovereign had personally presented to him. But he seems to have gone crazy. After saying that, Hikari Kensei in the sky turned around and dove down, rushing towards the ground with a tail of light like a meteor. If you don't want him to be stripped of his title of Sword Saint and be nailed to the pillar of shame for massacring innocent civilians and implicate his family, Sun Lang said calmly, "Work together with me and restrain him first." Chapter 1098. Wei Shihe activated the power of the sun, and the light shone on his body. He was like the sun in the sky, descending from the sky with thousands of rays of light. His momentum was extremely great, and it was especially eye-catching in the dark night sky. It was like the Buddha's palm. Sun Lang said, "Join hands with me." Wei Wangshu heard this and instinctively refused. They were not on the same side at all. Moreover, why would she decide to fight against her brother with him just because of Sun Lang's few words? But she did find that her brother's condition was very wrong. First, he was furious and started to fight with Sun Lang without caring about anything. Then, he lost his composure and shouted out something that he should not have said. Her brother had obviously lost his mind today. She used the tying sword to protect herself and ordered the Imperial Guards to retreat. She put up a defensive posture and ignored Sun Lang's suggestion. Stupid. General Shansei shook his head calmly and sighed. Wei Wangshu said coldly, "You are so powerful. Why do you have to join hands with me?" Sun Lang nodded and said, "You are right." The four elements were activated and the light waves danced. The chaos sword rolled up a blazing sword aura, and the five elements evolved and changed again. Red fire burned into earth. Thick earth gathered into mountains, and rocks turned into gold. Mountain rocks turned into water, multiplying its power, and turned into a tsunami of water's spiritual energy. It was the perfect counter to the power of the sun that belonged to the power of the sun. Water was ever-changing, flowing and changing, but it was soft and firm. Flowing and flowing were the essence of the water element. Facing Wei Shi and the meteor that was crashing down, the ever-changing water element's spiritual power spread out layers of nets, like a whirlpool, constantly wearing down the burning and terrible heavenly fire. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. The water flow was ever-changing. After slightly blocking Wei Shihe's momentum, the gentle water flow instantly turned into a tsunami that could destroy everything. Softness turned into toughness, vast and powerful. Sun Lang struck out with his sacred sword and shouted, "Go to hell!" In the midst of Wei Shihe's painful roar, Hikari Kensei was thrown into the air again. Sun Lang took advantage of the opportunity to swing his sword and fly up, chasing after Wei Shihe, who was floating in the air. The sky was filled with sword shadows and flame power, accompanied by Hikari Kensei's painful roar and counterattack. The rumbling and shocking confrontation continued to shake the entire imperial capital. The two sword saints had unleashed their true power. The battlefield had already shifted to the sky, so Sun Lang didn't need to control the aftermath of the confrontation. He used all of his strength to deal with Wei Shihe. The might of the two sacred swords' confrontation was naturally astonishing. Explosions of light flashed continuously, and streams of fire shot out. Streams of raging flames were blown away by the exchange of chi waves, whistling as they fell in all directions. This was the burning flame from the holy swords. Once it landed on a house, it would definitely ignite a terrible fire that could not be extinguished by ordinary water. Sun Lang's voice came from the sky. Go and stop it. Don't hurt anyone. The generals and the others looked at Wei Wangshu and hesitated. If they went to stop the aftermath of the confrontation, the defense of the Copper Sparrow Terrace would be weak, and this woman would definitely take advantage of the situation, and no one would be able to stop her. Moreover, the eyes of the pragmatists, led by Android, flashed with cold light. If the flames scattered in all directions and fell into the residences, it would ignite a raging fire and kill some people. Wei Shihe's sword saint of Sun would be done for. After all, he was the one who took the initiative to cause trouble tonight and attacked Sun Lang without permission. Not to mention that he attacked a first-grade official of the imperial court. He also harmed innocent people. When the time came, there would be a lot of discussion in the imperial court, and Sun Lang's side would exert more force, and it would be enough to destroy this damned bird's reputation and send him back home to eat rice. Just when everyone was hesitating for various reasons, Sun Lang shouted again. "What are you waiting for?" The generals suddenly came to their senses. Except for a few heartless and cold-blooded fellows, the others' faces were immediately red. Today, the fire was raging and innocent lives were threatened. As soldiers of the Empire and officials of the imperial court, how could they be so cold-blooded to calculate the gains and losses? The height of the imperial court made the officials high and mighty. They made the national policy, influenced the world, and controlled the whole world with their own strength. In the long run, even the most sincere people would slowly change their minds and see human lives as simple numbers. They would get used to weighing the pros and cons and sacrificing a small number of people. They were not like this in the past, but in the 2 years after the success of Tianyuan and the imperial court rewarded them, they lost their leader and spiritual mentor. Fortunately, the commander of war had returned. Fortunately, the commander of war was still the same commander of war. The generals immediately mobilized the imperial army and spread out to extinguish the burning flames. They were all powerful generals from Tianyuan. Although they were no match for Hikari Kensei, the imperial army was more than enough to stop the aftermath of the battle. It was just that this way, the defense of the Copper Sparrow Terrace would be declared empty. The Grand Moon Sword Master, who was watching from the side, could completely charge in. Wei Wangshu stood in a daze. She was in a dilemma. She listened to Sun Lang's unhesitant order and looked at the generals who were moving away to stop the heavenly fire. Then, she looked at her brother who was roaring in the air and pouring down the sun radiance sword aura without hesitation. She gritted her teeth and waved the lunar radiance sacred sword. The Grand Moon sword rose, as if a second moon had risen in the sky. Silver light scattered and frost condensed. The heavenly fire flowing from the sun radiance sacred sword instantly disappeared and was swallowed by the darkness. In such an intense battle, Sun Lang's voice was still very leisurely. At least you have some sense of responsibility as a sword saint. Wei Wangshu's beautiful face was cold. While blocking the heavenly fire, she observed the battle in the sky. Her brother was in a difficult battle. Sun Lang had firmly gained the upper hand, but General Shansei did not seem to have the intention of winning quickly. The battle was still in a stalemate. The Lunar Radiance Sword Saint suddenly had a bad feeling. He was stalling for time. She shouted, "Brother, Shiha, stop it." Now that the two Sword Saints were fighting in the middle of the night, everyone in the imperial capital only needed to raise their heads to see the bright flames shining in the dark night sky. The momentum was so great that no one could ignore it. The imperial court would definitely not sit by and watch the battle continue. Before long, various forces would arrive to intervene. Wei Shiha had attacked Sun Lang for no reason previously. No matter what, he could not justify himself. However, her brother turned a deaf ear to her shouts. He desperately urged the Sun Radiant's spiritual energy and launched a crazy attack on Sun Lang, as if the other party was his irreconcilable enemy. That's why I said you were stupid. Sun Lang's calm words were fanning the flames. If you had joined forces with me to take him down earlier, you would have had something to say. Unfortunately, you gave up this opportunity. Wei Wangshu said sternly, "What did you do to him?" That's even more stupid, Sun Lang said. If I had the ability to make him go crazy, why would I wait until now? Wouldn't it be better to let him lose control in the Imperial Palace and start a massacre? At this moment, a strong beam of light shot from the distance and shone on the sky where the two were fighting. Wei Wangshu's beautiful face turned pale. Imperial astronomer. This meant that the official forces of the Earth Empress had responded to the battle here. The huge state machine was about to wake up, and the violence of the strongest country in the world would be projected here. In the direction of the Imperial City, an earth-shattering dragon roar sounded. The pattern of a five-clawed golden dragon rose in the Imperial Palace. In the distance, the cavalry roared. The splendor of the Imperial army rushed into the sky. The Dragon Spear army rode on Cheongchi beasts. The Sharp Vanguard Battalion rode on flying swords. The brilliance of the powerful Imperial army flashed. In the sky and on the ground, the elite military forces were gathering here. The Copper Sparrow Terrace became the center of the storm. Sun Lang frowned slightly. The Imperial astronomer controlled the celestial stabilizer, which was capable of tracking the movements of the monarch weapons in the world and locking onto their positions. The exquisite instrument emitted a blazing radiance, locking onto the positions of the two sacred sword masters. Strange beasts soared, flying swords flew, the Dragon Spear army spread out the heaven net, and the Sharp Vanguard Battalion spread out the earth net. They spread out to seal off the routes and set up an aerial battle formation, surrounding Sun Lang and Wei Shihe in the center. The leading general was wearing an iron mask and holding the 8-foot dragon spear. He raised the commander's seal in his hand and said, "By the order of the Martial Arts Hall, the Imperial Army admonishes that it is a serious crime to attack the Imperial Army in the capital without permission. The two of you quickly withdraw the Imperial Army." Sun Lang said indifferently. "Hikari Kinsei and Wei Shihe gathered their men and went to my property to cause trouble. They even used their weapons and tried to assassinate me. I'm just defending myself." The general said sternly, "If you want to defend yourself, you can go to His Majesty and the Martial Arts Hall to explain yourself. Now that the Martial Arts Hall's order is here, I want you to withdraw your weapons immediately." Sun Lang shrugged his shoulders, and the confusion's sacred sword turned into a stream of scarlet flames and dissipated. Since his weapon was withdrawn, Hikari Kinsei roared and slashed the sun's sacred sword, Solar Ring Gorgeous Slash, at Sun Lang violently. The Divine Stratagem General took a few steps back, and his water element spirit energy was as soft as a spring, dispelling the Sun Sword Chi and pushing the Saint Sword Chi away. At the same time, he shouted, "Hey, I've already put away my weapon. Where's his?" That Iron Mask general shouted, "Hikari Kinsei and Wei Shihe, the Martial Arts Hall's order is here. I order you to put down your weapon, stop your hostile actions, and return to the Martial Arts Hall with me to accept the Martial Arts Hall's interrogation." Wei Shihe turned a deaf ear and continued to chase after Sun Lang. Sun Lang dodged and defended while shouting, "He is crazy. You guys better use force." That Dragon Spear army general was wearing an iron mask, and no one could see the change in his expression. However, his eyes were filled with cold, killing intent. He still shouted, "Wei Shihe, put down your weapon." However, he didn't take any further action. Sun Lang waited for him to shout for the fourth time before he looked over indifferently. While blocking Wei Shihe's attacks, he said calmly, "I am Sun Lang. I am talking to you guys. Wei Shihe has already gone crazy. You guys better fulfill your duty and take him down by force. Don't have any thoughts that you shouldn't have. Otherwise, you will definitely regret it." That general said coldly, "I am following orders. I don't need your guidance." Sun Lang nodded and said, "I understand." He stopped retreating and faced Wei Shihe, who had a crazed expression on his face. The Mars sacred sword materialized in the blazing flames, and the sword tip gave off a scorching radiance. The general of the Dragon Spear army shouted, "Sun Lang, withdraw your Imperial army." The sword aura was unstoppable, and the four elements moved back and forth. The power of the raging waves blasted Wei Shihe away, and he crashed into the heavenly net set up by the dragon spear army. Chapter 1099. Hikari Kensei was caught off guard and was hit by Sun Lang's home run. Accompanied by a furious roar, Wei Shihe charged toward the sky net set up by the dragon spear army. From afar, the sound and light effects were extremely powerful, and it was as if a god was flying through the air. The general of the dragon spear army shouted, "How dare you!" Before he could finish a sentence, Wei Shihe crashed into the sky net woven from golden threads. This was the 1,000 weaves of the Imperial Army, and it was a composite magical equipment. It was used to capture and hunt powerful enemies, regardless of whether they were powerful martial artists or ferocious monsters. Once it enveloped them, the entire sky net would immediately react and gather the power of every thread in the net toward the prey. It would attract and bind the prey, negating their struggles and resistance. However, after Wei Shihe crashed into the Skynet, this composite Imperial Army armor only flashed with a golden glow. It did not have any effect of binding the enemy. The Sun Sword Saint felt as if he had crashed into a trampoline, and a huge recoil was sent flying back towards Sun Lang. The general of the Dragon Spear Army roared, "The two of you, put down your weapons and surrender." Sun Lang let out a mocking laugh. "How pitiful," he said to the general leading the army. The other party's voice was extremely cold. "The army has arrived, and the order has been issued. As a general of the imperial court, you disregarded the laws of the country and carried a weapon to commit a crime. How should you be punished?" Sun Lang smiled. "If you like it, say a few more words." That person said coldly, "Do you think that the laws of the empires are unable to punish you?" General Shinsei grinned. "That's right. What else can I do?" The sacred sword of Mars ignited with crimson flames. Its sword aura was scorching as it collided with the sacred sword of Sun Glory. There were no tricks in this attack. It was the purest collision of energy. The sacred sword of Sun Glory and the sacred sword of Fire Glory were both of the Yang attribute, and they were the most ferocious divine weapons in the world. When they collided with each other, it was as if two super bombs had exploded at the same time. Visible white air currents swept across the sky, and then a huge fireball of astonishing intensity expanded. With a deafening sound, countless streams of fire shot out in all directions. At this moment, the Skynet had been formed, and the Dragon Spear Army and the Sharp Edge Army were naturally the targets of the Dragon Spear Army at the same time. The two composite Imperial Army armor glowing brilliantly and swallowed the shockingly hot flames. This tied down their energy. Just as the general of the Dragon Spear Army was about to issue a warning, he heard Wei Shihe roar in pain again. A fierce battle broke out in the sky. Taking advantage of this tit-for-tat explosion, Sun Lang used his all-pervasive winding fingers to sneak in, using slow to fight fast, using softness to overcome strength. The 24 simplified Tai Chi fist exercises that he had blindly learned in school in his previous life had been perfected, verified, and sublimated in this world. It exploded with astonishing power, combining strength and softness, seamlessly switching between moves. A sudden clap of thunder broke out in the spring rain. Sun Lang first transformed and then attacked. He smashed Wei Shihe's face with a move, blocking and hammering him into the sky net created by the Dragon Spear Army. The Sun Sword Saint once again turned into a shooting star and crashed into the sky net. The general of the Dragon Spear Army ignored Wei Shihe and shouted at Sun Lang, "I'm warning you for the last time. Immediately withdraw the Imperial." Before he could finish speaking, a resplendent sword Qi soared into the sky and chased after Wei Shihe. The general of the Dragon Spear Army took a deep breath and raised the dragon spear in his right hand, preparing to issue an order. He knew what he was doing. He knew what he had to do. He knew what he had to face. This was his mission. But at this moment, another unforeseen event occurred. Wei Shihe crashed into the Skynet. As usual, he was not restrained by the combined Imperial Army. He was prepared to use the recoil to make a comeback. but Sun Lang's sword Qi had already shot through the sky. This powerful and domineering force landed squarely on Wei Shiha's body, causing the Sun Sword Saint to roar in pain. But that was all. With the sacred sword in hand and the solar fire divine light protecting him, how could he be injured so easily? The pain only increased the Sun Sword Saint's ferocity. Wei Shiha was about to use his innate Sun spiritual energy to counterattack. But at this moment, a powerful and invisible force restrained his body. The sky net had been activated. The general of the Dragon Spear Army was shocked. He suddenly looked at his subordinates. The soldiers who were controlling Tianluo were also shocked. Just a moment ago, they realized that they had lost control of Tianluo. It was as if someone had suddenly appeared out of nowhere and bypassed them to give Tianluo an order to subdue the enemy. Ah! Hikari Kinsei struggled violently. The solar fire divine light surrounding his body erupted once again. The solar fire divine light resisted the restraining power of the Skynet. The Sun Sword Saint was one of the 7 luminaries and was very powerful. They were the first-rate imperial army of Hutu and had the power of the sun. Now that they had erupted, the pressure on the Skynet increased greatly. The members of the Dragon Spear Army who were controlling the Heavenly Net sensed the instability of the Heavenly Net and subconsciously began to counterattack and fight against Wei Shiha. Faced with this unforeseen event, the general of the Dragon Spear Army gritted his teeth. Before he could make a decision, Sun Lang's sword Aura rose again and made the decision for him. Another sword Qi landed on the Sun Sword Saint's body. This time, Wei Shiha didn't even let out a cry of pain. It was as if this shocking and majestic sword Qi didn't hurt him at all. However, the solar fire divine light surrounding the Sun Sword Saint suddenly erupted. It was like a bucket of dynamite that had been stained with sparks. The scorching and terrifying solar fire divine light spread along the meridians of the Skynet and burned toward the Dragon Spear Army soldiers controlling the many nodes of the Skynet. Like the omnipresent and all-pervasive sunlight, the terrifying solar fire divine light spread and burned, easily injuring the human body. The Dragon Spear Army soldiers with weaker cultivations were already groaning and screaming. The general of the Dragon Spear Army was so angry that his eyes almost popped out. How could he not see that this was done by Sun Lang? He shouted, "Sun Lang, what are you doing?" Sun Lang laughed and said, "Of course I'm helping you capture the crazy traitor." He used his actions to express his intentions. He slashed out several more sword Qi toward the nodes of the Skynet. The seemingly invincible and majestic sword Qi didn't destroy the Skynet. Instead, it seeped into it and stabilized the Skynet that was on the verge of collapse from the solar fire divine light. The golden light shone once again, and the strings of the Imperial Army suddenly tightened. Wei Shiha, who was trapped within, cried out in pain. With Sun Lang's help, the Imperial Army of the Skynet displayed an even more powerful strength. The tough golden strings extended and started to wrap around Wei Shiha's limbs and body. The strings tightened and blocked the burning of the solar fire divine light. They broke through the Sun Sword Saint's defense and left deeper and deeper wounds on his skin. The situation seemed to be stabilizing. Wei Shiha, who had gone crazy, seemed to be under the control of the Skynet. The general of the Dragon Spear Army's eyes flickered. This wasn't the outcome he wanted to see. He was coldly calculating in his heart. He looked at a few of his deputies and secretly gave orders. After the arrangements were completed, he looked at Sun Lang and said coldly, "Wei Shiha has been captured. Sun Lang, put down your weapons immediately." He only received a mocking sneer in response. There was also a sentence that was read aloud without any sincerity. "Ayaya," Sun Lang said, "something bad has happened." The Skynet Imperial Army that had already firmly restrained Wei Shiha broke apart. The golden strings continued to disintegrate, as if they were unable to resist the terrifying power of the solar sword. The spindles in the hands of the Dragon Spear Army continued to explode. This meant that the Skynet Imperial Army was gradually losing control. Wei Shiha's struggle became more intense, and this accelerated the collapse of the Sky Net Imperial Army. In an instant, a chain reaction occurred. The extremely tough Sky Net Imperial Army formation was declared to be broken. In the sky, Hikari Kinsei, who had regained his freedom, roared towards the sky. Pain, restraint, anger, all the injuries and pain he had suffered before fueled his rising killing intent. The sacred sun sword emitted a dazzling brilliance as it floated around its master, emitting a sharp sword hum. Wei Shiha opened his red eyes and scanned his surroundings with a pure desire to destroy. Sun Lang heartlessly said sarcastically, "He's going to eat people." The aura of the solar sword swept across. Wei Shiha raised his hand and unleashed an AoE attack. The dozen or so Dragon Spear army soldiers closest to him were caught off guard and were immediately engulfed by the blazing sword light. They didn't even have the time to scream before they were completely annihilated from this world. Sun Lang turned pale with fright and shouted in fear, "Wah!" Then, he quickly retreated in fear. Wei Shiha scanned his left and right. His red eyes were filled with a beast-like desire to destroy. His rationality disappeared, and his killing instinct took control of his powerful body. He remembered the pain he had just suffered. After breaking free from the despicable trap, of course, he would launch the cruelest revenge on the reckless hunters. He roared and the solar sword rushed into the sky, emitting a dazzling light. It was as if the sun had risen in the night sky. Countless rays of sword aura shot out like a waterfall and swept towards the chaotic Dragon Spear army. Rebellion! Rebellion! Wei Shiha has rebelled. Sun Lang yelled at the side. General who is here under the orders of the Martial Arts Hall, quickly capture this rebellious and crazy person. Defend the laws of the Imperial Court and the dignity of the Empire. Protect us law-abiding citizens. Wei Shiha had already rushed into the Dragon Spear Army's battle formation and massacred the despicable enemies who had plotted against him. Soldiers were constantly being burned into ashes by the solar fire divine radiance. The leading general was already in a terrible fix as he gathered his subordinates and fought against Wei Shiha. How could he have the time to care about Sun Lang's nonsense? The lunar sword rose, and the moonlight shone. Wei Wangshu finally couldn't stand it anymore. Putting aside the fact that her brother's condition wasn't right, she couldn't allow her brother to massacre the Empire's soldiers. "Brother, stop." She mobilized the lunar spiritual power and tried to trigger the resonance of the solar explosion. At the same time, she called out and tried to dissuade her brother. However, the scarlet flames swept across and the sword aura slashed down. Sun Lang blocked in front of her. "What are you going to do?" he said calmly. "This general is here under orders. How can we interfere? If you go up now, you might get yelled at by him. Just watch." Wei Wangshu panicked. "Get out of the way," Sun Lang said indifferently. "What did you do when I asked you to team up with me? I gave you the chance, but you didn't grab it. It's too late now. You should think about how to get yourself out of this." The longer the time dragged on, the more people Wei Shiha would kill, and the more serious the consequences would be. Wei Wangshu didn't hesitate this time. The lunar sword turned into a hazy moonlight, and the sword intent was clear and everywhere. It pierced towards Sun Lang. "Wah!" Sun Lang dodged and parried the attack while shouting, "Wei Shiha's sister can't hold it in anymore. She wants to save her brother. These siblings are her accomplices. The Wei clan has rebelled. The entire Wei clan has rebelled." These words were extremely noisy in Wei Wangshu's ears. Her mind was in a mess, and she became more anxious. Just as she wanted to increase her strength and attack, she saw Sun Lang's cold and indifferent gaze. "If you don't want to become a lunatic like your brother, I advise you to use the lunar sword less." Wei Wangshu's heart trembled. She shouted, "What did you say?" "A piece of advice." Sun Lang said, "Just like how I advise you team up with me. It's up to you whether you believe me or not." After he finished speaking, he opened a path for her. "If you want to go, then go. At least I can see a tragedy of siblings killing each other. It'll be fun." In the sky, the Dragon Spear army was forced to retreat. After losing the Imperial army, they were caught off guard and couldn't form an effective defense or counterattack in a short period of time. Many lives were lost, and the onlookers were just watching. Sun Lang, the generals of the Shansei, and the sharp vanguard battalion that had been lying in wait after setting up the Earth Net. There were many factions in the imperial court, and politics was a game of compromise. Everyone had their own stand. It had always been like this. However, the Dragon Spear Army and the Sharp Vanguard Battalion were the first batch of people to fly over. Now that the situation had changed, and the Dragon Spear Army, as the elites of the Imperial Army, was being massacred, this was an unexpected result. So people couldn't take it anymore. Sun Lang tilted his head and looked at the rumbling sound of iron hooves in the distance. He laughed coldly. The show is about to start. Chapter 1100. Iron hooves thundered and dazzling. More troops, more Imperial Army. The second batch of rapid response troops was about to arrive. Following them were the important officials of the Imperial Court. The two seven luminaries sword saints were fighting fiercely in the Imperial capital, recklessly unleashing the terrifying destructive power of the sacred sword. Not only did it alert the Imperial astronomer, but it also alerted the Martial Arts Hall. As the center of military power, the Martial Arts Hall not only had the authority to control the world's martial arts, but it also had the responsibility to protect the Imperial capital's peace. When they discovered that Sun Lang and Wei Shihe were fighting fiercely, they immediately activated the commander's seal and mobilized the military horses to suppress them. As the two parties were both seven luminary sword saints, they not only had honorable statuses, but they also had outstanding martial arts skills. According to the standards and ranks of these two people, the martial arts hall's leaders had to come personally. It should be known that in the Hutu Empire, the grades of the officials were often directly proportional to their combat strength. The martial arts hall's military commanders and leaders not only had profound cultivation, but they also had high-grade Imperial Army weapons. Their combat strength was extremely shocking. If Sun Lang and Wei Shihe were to fight fiercely without stopping, the military commanders might have to go personally and beat them up together to calm the two sword saints down. It was already too late. Wei Wangshu closed her eyes and let out a long sigh. The martial arts hall's military commanders were about to arrive, but Wei Shihe was still on a killing spree. He ignored his sister's cries and did not realize that a great danger was right in front of him. This time, he had gone crazy and killed indiscriminately in front of everyone. It was destined that he would no longer be the Sun Swordmaster. The Imperial Court would initiate a case of no confidence against Akari Kensei, force Wei Shihe to hand over the sacred sword, and abolish his sword saint status. His reputation, status, and power would all be far away from him. There might even be worse consequences. Because Sun Lang was watching from the side, how could this guy let go of this opportunity to hit him when he was down? For a moment, Wei Wangshu's heart was filled with mixed feelings. She was very confused now. Why did it become like this? First, Shen Yaohua was lured away and kidnapped. Then, Sun Lang threw a lot of excrement in the direction of the Imperial Palace. His elder brother immediately became furious and summoned the Imperial Palace guards to the Copper Sparrow Terrace to denounce him. Unexpectedly, after being scolded by Sun Lang with a few words, he lost his mind and attacked Sun Lang in anger. After that, he fell into madness. What was going on? Wei Wangshu's mind spun rapidly as she pondered how to deal with the current situation. She stared at Sun Lang, her eyes filled with sharp scrutiny. Logically speaking, Wei Shihe's sudden madness was most suspicious of Sun Lang. Regardless of motive, means, or position, he was the person who could do such a thing. But what he said before, the army was about to arrive. Wei Wangshu did not have much time left. In a flash, many thoughts flashed through her mind. Countless suspicions, doubts flashed through her mind. Many paths appeared before her. Her elder brother's future, her family's fate, and even the future of this country. She made her choice. Wei Wangshu gritted her teeth and said, "What do you know?" Sun Lang said with a half-smile, "A lot." The Grand Moon Sword's face was as cold as ice. Her beautiful face, paired with her cold temperament, was enough to make all the men in the imperial capital go crazy. She gripped the sword in her hand tightly and said, "If Shiha's strange behavior has nothing to do with you, then who is our enemy? Who can plot against him?" Sun Lang chuckled and said, "I'm not telling you. Stop beating around the bush." Wei Wangshu lost her patience. She really did not have much time left. The Grand Moon Sword's master spoke very quickly. "You suggested that I join forces with you before, and then you came to me and said these strange things. I remember that day outside the palace. You also said something profound." She said firmly, "You want to use us and borrow our strength, right? Since you have such intentions, many things can be discussed. What do you want? What do you want from me?" Sun Lang looked at her in surprise. He did not expect the Grand Moon Sword's master to be so decisive. "You actually believe me?" he asked. Wei Wangshu said calmly, "You might not believe it, but when I opened the brocade pouch with Shiha at the Great Desolate Mountain, we had a fierce disagreement for the first time. Shiha thought that this was a random order." Sun Lang raised his eyebrows. "Unfortunately, I insisted. My judgment was wrong. Since we were young, no matter what disagreements we had, Shiha would always listen to me. That time was no exception. But I was wrong. I did not expect that result." Wei Wangshu sighed softly. "You are determined to take revenge. We should all be on your kill list, right? Even if my judgment was wrong, Shiha never blamed me. Since he listened to my idea, he was determined to see you as an enemy. After you came back, he was even more so. He knew your personality and knew that you would not hesitate to take revenge on me. In order to protect me, he would also not hesitate to stand against you." Sun Lang turned to look at the sky. The sun was dazzling, and the heavenly fire was everywhere. The Sun Sword Master was chasing after the Dragon Spear army and killing them. He seemed to have lost his mind. Then he ended up like this. Sun Lang said, "Like by Yu Wei, Old Bai also chose to obey the order back then. As a result, the battle in the Great Desolate Mountain hurt both others and himself. He became crazy and isolated himself. In the past 2 years, he was trapped in a circle and fell into infinite self-blame and regret. More and more cracks appeared in his state of mind as a warrior, which was supposed to be perfect. As a result, evil spirits took advantage of this and entered his mind. Since then, he became crazy, and even Wei Wangshu's expression suddenly changed." "Even what?" Sun Lang looked at her and smiled faintly. He did not speak. "I understand." Wei Wangshu sighed. "Back then, Shiha was right, and I was wrong. He once believed in you, and he made the right decision. In order to protect me, he fell into this predicament. Now, it's my turn to protect him. He once believed in you, so I'll also believe in you this time, so—" She stared at Sun Lang and said calmly, "What do you want? The Holy Sword? Or me?" Sun Lang said seriously, "What do you mean?" Wei Wangshu smiled faintly. "Don't pretend. I know what you are thinking. If you are afraid, I can take the initiative and come to you." Sun Lang waved his hand. "You think too much. I'm not interested in you." Hearing this, Wei Wangshu could not help but sneer, even though the situation was so critical. General Shansei said angrily, "Damn it. Nobody believes the truth these days." Wei Wangshu stopped smiling and urged, "Tell me quickly. What do you want me to do?" Sun Lang glanced at the rapidly approaching fire in the distance. A large number of people were about to arrive. He said calmly, "It is very simple. I want you to pay a deposit first." "What deposit?" Sun Lang's eyes were as sharp as knives. He said in a low voice, "Accuse me loudly. Accuse me of driving Wei Shiha crazy." Chapter 1101. Accuse me loudly. Accuse me of making Wei Shiha crazy. Wei Wangshu was bewildered and asked, "What?" Sun Lang lowered his voice and sped up his speech. "Cut the crap. Are you going to do it or not?" In an instant, the Grand Moon Sword Saint made a decision. He raised the Moon Radiant Sword, and with a dazzling radiance, Wei Wangshu thrust his sword at Sun Lang and shouted, "Sun Lang, what did you do to my brother?" Sun Lang swung his sword and counterattacked. The two sacred swords collided. The silver moonlight and the blazing flames were in sharp opposition. Neither of them was willing to yield an inch. A formless energy spread out in all directions. The two sword saints emitted a sharp aura as the sacred swords in their hands emitted whistling sounds. A fierce battle was about to begin. All of you stop. A vigorous roar could be heard from afar. Armored cavalry escorted the horses and trampled the city walls. Several military commanders who were on duty in the martial arts hall arrived together. Marquis Hongshan Tian Xiang yelled out, "Son of a B****, you actually used your weapon." Sun Lang bared his teeth and said, "F***ck your mother. Who are you scolding?" The martial arts hall was in charge of military affairs and was also a centralized monster that expanded during the Great War of Heaven Yuan. It was the last main force for the military officials to contend against the imperial power. Unless there was a major event that shook the foundation, the martial arts hall would usually remain neutral. Just like how Sun Lang caused a huge ruckus after he returned to the capital and fought with the emperor. The martial arts hall heads basically didn't help either side. They all had a tacit understanding and bottom line. However, today's incident seemed to have touched this so-called bottom line. Therefore, the martial arts hall heads didn't look too good. Tianzai had a bad temper and immediately opened his mouth. "You all were sacred swords and are admired by all martial artists in the world. The seven luminaries sword saint actually fought in the capital of the empire, causing the entire city to hear about it and the citizens to panic. Especially you. Sun Lang, why is it always you?" Sun Lang sneered and said, "Tian Buguang, it's always me. Do you really not know why? I'm not Tian Buguang." Before Tian Zai could finish his words, a few miserable shrieks came from the sky. A few Dragon Spear army soldiers were unable to withstand the sun fire divine radiance and were burned to ashes by the sun radiant sacred sword. The sky was as bright as day. Wei Shihe was in a killing mood and let out an even more excited roar. "Wei Shihe!" Tian Zai was infuriated. The martial arts hall's military commanders were all here, and this bastard still dared to continue committing crimes. Was there still any law and order? Are there still laws? He roared, "Get down here." Wei Shihe sensed Marquis Hongshan's rage and responded with a provocative roar. Sun Lang kindly translated. He said, "F***CKU, mother of ***, your whole family is raised by a young woman." Marquis Hongshan fiercely glared at Sun Lang. "I'll deal with you later." He stared at Wei Shihe, who was slaughtering in the sky, and said decisively, "Use the sword seal." Marquis Guangzong, Marquis Changhua, and Marquis Qi Jingho nodded at the same time. "That's how it should be." Wei Wangshu cried out, "Military Commander Tian." Tian Zai said coldly, "Grand Moon Sword Sovereign, you don't have to say anything. Are you going to let him kill the entire Dragon Spear army?" He pulled the wooden box behind him and pressed his hand on it. The other three martial arts hall's military commanders did the same. The four of them poured their true chi and shook it at the same time. The wooden box opened, and a seal surrounded by the radiance of the scorching sun floated up. The intense radiance stung Wei Wangshu's eyes. Wei Wangshu subconsciously looked at Sun Lang. Sun Lang's eyes also became playful. "Oh," he said, "you are well prepared. You even brought Hoi Yao's sword seal?" Tianzai turned a deaf ear to him. He held the sword seal with one hand and raised it up high. The radiance of the sun soared into the sky. Wei Shihe in the sky seemed to have sensed a fatal danger approaching. He let out a furious roar and abandoned the Dragon Spear army that was retreating pathetically. He swooped down with the fierce radiance of the sun towards Tianzai. Tianzai narrowed his eyes and aimed the seal at the beast that was descending from the sky. "The sword saint has committed crime. I'll remove your weapon," he said sternly. "In accordance with the law of heaven, I'll seal your ability." An indescribable wave spread out from the sword seal, as if it was giving the order to close the seal. The radiant sun glory sacred sword let out an unwilling cry. The brilliant radiance that filled the sky suddenly shattered. It lost its invincible and brilliant aura and became an ordinary sword. Wei Shihe was even more furious after losing his weapon. He didn't stop his descent and let out a series of shrill roars. He still charged towards Tianzai. However, after losing the top-notch Imperial army in the world, he was no longer the most destructive human-shaped weapon on this planet. Even though he still maintained an extremely high level of combat strength, the three martial arts hall masters beside Tianzai were also the Empire's top experts. They also had the Imperial army. There was no suspense in the battle. Before Wei Shihe could touch Tianzai, the three martial arts hall masters beside Marquis Hongshan attacked at the same time. The airwaves exploded and shook the void. In an instant, Wei Shihe's meridians were restrained. Golden ropes and silver chains wrapped around his body. All the vital acupoints on his body were arranged clearly. He fell to the ground. Leave him some dignity as a sword saint. Tianzai kept the sword seal and stretched out his hand to summon the falling sun glory sacred sword. He looked at Wei Shihe, who was lying on the ground, and said coldly, "Put him on the carriage and bring him back first." He looked at Sun Lang. Sun Lang waved the Mars sacred sword in his hand and asked, "Where's the fire sword seal?" Tianzai said stiffly, "I didn't bring it." Sun Lang smiled, but the other hand behind his back made a gesture. Wei Wangshu saw it and suddenly had a thought. After hesitating for a moment, the Lunar Sword Master made a decision. General Tian, the seven luminaries' sword saint, was the pillar of the kingdom. As the leader of the peerless Imperial army, he had his dignity and pride. She bowed deeply to Tianzai and said sincerely, "I'm not trying to absolve my brother, but he has lost his mind tonight and is in a crazy state. How can the Sun Sword Saint become crazy for no reason? I hope the Martial Arts Hall can investigate the inside story. Forgive me for being blunt, but the cause and effect of this matter are all related to the Shunsei General Sun Lang." Yes. It's me. It's all me." Sun Lang spread out his hands and said, "It's me who cursed from a distance. I relied on my mysterious telepathy to attract Wei Shihe's hatred and lured him to gather his men to the Copper Sparrow Pavilion in the middle of the night. This allowed me to cast another terrifying curse and turn the seven luminary sword saint, one of the few experts in the world, into a crazy person. You all have to be careful. If you make me unhappy, I'll make you all lose your minds." Tianzai said, "Sun Lang, don't be so sarcastic. Let me ask you, as a general of the Imperial Court, why didn't you stop Wei Shihe when you saw him killing people? Instead, you watched him slaughter the Empire's soldiers?" Sun Lang nodded and said, "Oh, right. I would have forgotten if you didn't mention it." He turned his head and saw the scattered remnants of the Dragon Spear army gathering. They were previously slashed by Wei Shihe. They lost their heaven net and were beaten up violently. The losses were severe. The general of the Dragon Spear army relied on his excellent martial arts skills and impressive positioning to stay alive. However, he looked very dejected. "General," he smiled very gently and said, "Come over here for a moment." That general's eyes were filled with hatred and resentment. He was already full of enmity towards Sun Lang from the start. The reason why the Dragon Spear army suffered such heavy losses was because Sun Lang had done a lot of things to provoke Wei Shihe's hatred towards the Dragon Spear army. This led to the huge losses and defeat of the Dragon Spear army. Now that the generals of the Martial Arts Hall were present, the situation was under control. Sun Lang's smile was filled with evil intentions. His sanctimonious and peaceful face was filled with deep malice. This general of the Dragon Spear army knew what kind of ending he was about to face. He had not completed the task that Lord had given him, and the soldiers under his command had suffered heavy losses. Now that he had been targeted by Sun Lang, his end could be imagined, but he had long been mentally prepared. He did not regret his actions today. For a traitor like Sun Lang, how could he let him continue to call the wind and summon the rain in the Imperial Court? Even if he had to risk his life, he had to bite off a piece of meat from him. Didn't he want it to go over? Didn't he want to list out my crimes in front of the martial arts hall's big shots and arrest me? Since that's the case, I will go along with his wishes. That general of the Dragon Spear army rushed over and knelt down in front of Tianzai. He said loudly, "A lowly general, please." There was a flash of swordlight. He was stunned and realized that his head was falling down until it was dust. He saw his own body, and then his vision darkened as he fell into an eternal abyss. Sun Lang shook his Confusion Saint's sword, and a drop of blood was evaporated by the flames. General Shunsei said indifferently, "You kneeled so quickly and confessed so decisively. You are a real man." You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.